Welcome back to Today with Dr. K. I'm Dr. K. Wise Whitehead, folks. We are trying to get up and rolling here and finish our conversation. We're talking about the 14th Amendment, and I think it's important for us to have a serious conversation about this topic because there are some people who believe that just because Donald Trump says it, that it's going to happen. The 14th Amendment is not going to be pulled off the table simply because Donald Trump said it or even that he has the power to do it. Let's be clear. The legislative branch of the government, that's Congress, they actually write and pass laws. The executive branch of the government, that's where Donald Trump is. Along with the cabinet at the federal level, they make sure that the laws are enforced and they allocate necessary funding. It's the judicial branch of the government, which is the court system. They actually evaluate the laws passed by the legislative branch to determine whether or not they comply with the Constitution. They do interpretation of the law. Let's be very clear about what this power is that Donald Trump is kind of throwing around like he actually has it. I want to finish talking to Paul and keep the phones open. 410-319-8888. Paul, thank you for holding.
Yes, Dr. K, we got to be careful because when we saw the migration that came, when Donald Trump was separating the parents from the children, there are prisons out. There are secret concentrating camp prisons that's out here. I looked at YouTube. I looked how they turned a lot of Walmart into these secret prison places.
Right.
So Donald Trump has the power right now to put certain things into martial law.
Right. Yeah, he does have that power.
A Democrat would do that, but we got to be careful because I honestly believe that a lot of the stuff that has been happening is just a test run. That's all it was. It's just a test run because something is coming. These white Caucasian people are not going to go down without a fight, and their power will be stripped from them. Thanks for taking my call.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that, folks. I want to tell you to think about what that means, because what Paul is touching on and how it connects directly to what's happening with, undocumented residents and visitors to this country with the taking of their children, putting their children in tender age prisons. Now he's talking about the 14th Amendment. I mean, the slope he's going down. Now, he may not have the power to change this, but he does have the ability to get people stirred up. I mean, there's a lot of talk of the other these days, and it's reminiscent, in my opinion, of conversations that were happening as they led up to the Holocaust. The talk of the other, who shouldn't be at the table, who is considered to be a full American, who determines our protection, who is it that we should look after, who do we consider to be worthy of our time and our effort and our attention. And what Donald Trump is doing, he's stirring up that type of fever. We see it. Why else are people going in and blowing away people at a synagogue? The other. Why else are you going in and blowing away people at a church? The other. Why else are you okay with children being snatched from their parents? Arm babies, 2 and 3, 4 years old. The other. The other has become something that is scary to people who are of a certain race in this country. The other. They're taking things that belong to you, the things that you are entitled to. The other. It sounds like what happened under Hitler in Nazi Germany. The other. Let's begin to control and contain the other, and then let's eventually get rid of the other. It's a slow walk. You can see where it's leading, folks. We have Valerie on the phone from downtown Baltimore. Valerie, how are you?
Hi, Dr. K. I'm sorry, I have a bit of a cold.
I'm glad you called.
But I agree with Paul. He said it all. The thing is that really gets me is that white people are voting for a white nationalist administration. His administration is filled with white nationalists, and you should see and hear the things that they have been they perpetuate hate. Right. They perpetuate separation. So they're starting with the immigrants, and they're going to move their way down to us.
Yes, they
are.
And
the thing is that I what really bothers me, what I respect about your show the most is we don't agree on everything, and I really appreciate you taking need a task on things. But you know what I like most about your show is you fact check. Fact check is everything. And yesterday, I heard Faraji show, and this white lady got on there, and she spewed a whole lot of non-factual things that this is open air. People are listening. We have to fact check.
Yes.
These people are trolls.
Yes.
They're out there to mislead people, to give people misinformation. And those things that woman got on that radio station and said yesterday angered me so bad that I belong to a Facebook group. And we had a discussion last night about it. Faraji has to get a fact checker. You fact check. And I appreciate that. And I appreciate you providing us with factual information. Thank you for taking my
No
call.
problem, Valerie. Not a problem. Folks, we are going to remain committed to that. I have said it over and over again. I am very clear about the one thing about my show. People can have opinions all day long, but I think it's important for you to extrapolate your opinion from the facts. I mean, opinions don't move us forward. Facts do. We got to arm ourselves with the facts now more than ever before. Because if not, we're going to walk out here screaming and crying. The 14th Amendment is going to change and then we're going to be enslaved. No. This man doesn't have the power to do this. But let's talk about what he does have the power to do. We have Howard on the phone. Howard's a new caller from Baltimore. Howard, how are you? Welcome to the family.
Hello, Dr. K. Thank you for all the work that you do with WEAA and the information that you share. I would have loved to have gotten in on that Second Amendment discussion, but I didn't get a chance to. But what I wanted to say is that I agree with many of the callers. However, with the president putting in a Supreme Court that basically would agree with him, when it comes to the 14th Amendment, they can reinterpret it.
They can. They can. He can't, but they can. You're right.
Right.
Yes.
And then he would be empowered to do that.
Yes.
I honestly don't think that changes in the country would be as overt as some people may think. There will be subtle changes. I mean, and part of it, and the thing that we need to do as a community is we've got to get our kids, our males, from thinking that it's okay to get locked up and give away their freedom,
right? Because
they become essentially slaves to the government.
Yes,
they're tracked. They can't get jobs. All those kind of things. So they're stuck in a position of powerlessness and poverty. And what will come down to it is the haves and the have-nots.
Right, I agree.
The 1% is the one that are the ones that are controlling things. Just like during the Confederate War, it wasn't about, or the Civil War. It wasn't about the poor whites. The poor whites fought it. The rich whites were given the commands. But it was the cotton barons that were the ones that had the biggest skin in the game. So here we have it now today, where we have all these this top 1% who is controlling the government, and Donald Trump is a figurehead. I think someone called him an experiment, and he just might be, because he won't live forever, and he probably won't and he may not be elected the second time. But the more that you can get away with, it's about like cancer. Cancer's symptoms are very subtle at first, and by the time you pick it up, sometimes it's too late for the person, and the person dies.
That's actually a really good analogy, Howard. That's what it is. That idea, it's like a cancer, a slow. You don't pay attention to it, but it doesn't mean it's not growing. It doesn't mean it's not eventually going to catch up with you, and it's eventually going to kill you.
Yeah,
it's slow growing.
And lastly, our country is integrated to the sense that we have Black folks working in positions that are sensitive, that all it takes is a wrench to be thrown into the machinery, and you have a power grid shut down. So, like I said, I think that the change, if it were to occur, would be subtle,
right,
and would appear to be painless. But since I didn't get a chance to talk on that Second Amendment thing, we cannot, as a community, talk about disarming ourselves when the other folks aren't.
No, they're
Believe
not.
me.
They're not.
So I've actually sent an email or two to you. So,
I appreciate that. I will definitely be on the lookout for them. Howard, I appreciate you. Actually, Howard, hold on, because my producer's going to get your information. We are having our town crier about gun control, and I would love to include you in that conversation. We have Dwayne on the phone from Baltimore City. Dwayne, how are you?
Just happy to be here. Hey, as far as gun control, I think that every African American family should have a means to protect themselves, just in case some craziness pops off. And I just like to remind everybody that this is America, okay? And
stuff is always popping off here. Stuff is always popping off in this country.
Exactly. Not only that, let's not forget, okay? At the end of the day, they can do whatever they want.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what the Constitution says. They can change it. It is not a stretch that a white nationalist Congress and Donald Trump could decide to update the Constitution to their liking, in their next session. I mean,
with the support, of course, of the right-leaning United States Supreme Court, because that's where the power base has to come from. Like Donald Trump can say it, Congress can support and do laws, but that reinterpretation must come through the Supreme Court. That's the branch that does that. And right now, they are controlling that branch as well.
Yeah, but what I'm trying to say to you is that the Congress, the Senate, the legislative branch, and executive branch, okay, can amend the Constitution however they choose.
Right, but they also
get together.
But it's also with that idea of having the support. That's what I'm saying, is that when you start moving in that direction, that's why when that person called earlier, Gene talked about Marbury v. Madison, because it's talking about judicial review and what does that look like from 1803 and how you can have two branches coming together, uniting in power that can, in a sense, override the third branch. We know that with checks and balances. But I'm just adding to what you're saying, given the fact that there's a right-leaning Supreme Court, he literally has all three branches on one side of the political aisle.
Well, yeah, exactly. So basically what that means is they can do whatever the heck they want to do.
Yeah, they actually can. Okay? Actually, they can.
And then, one more thing. This is our fault. Okay? Because, we decided we was all butthurt, because of the Bernie Sanders scandal, and we decided as Democrats, or as liberals, I should say, I'm an independent, as liberals, we're so hurt, we're just not going to show up to the polls, and we're going to allow Donald Trump to become president. Okay, and here's what's really scary. Okay, it's really not Donald Trump that we should be worried about. It's the person who's working for the Federalist Society or some white nationalist group in college right now, or some lawyer right now who's on the white nationalist side, who sees all the stuff that Donald Trump can do and push, and when he becomes president,
right, and it's empowering that person. You're right. It's empowering the next generation. You are absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
We should be more afraid of them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what we need to do is we need to ignite ourselves and get behind candidates who are going to not only speak our language, okay, but even if they don't speak our language, as long as they're not speaking the other people's
language. That's the thing. There you go. That's the thing.
We even need them at this crucial time in history, because the democracy as we've known it is gone away. It's never coming back. And what we have left right now, what we have left right now on this carcass, we have to try to maintain it.
All right, I'm agreeing. Thank you so much, Dwayne. Folks, it's very interesting when we start talking about the 14th Amendment, because it seems like ever since this particular president has come into office, this particular president, people seem to be more confused about what the three branches do than ever before. This is why we need civics to be taught in school, because if you don't learn civics, if you don't read the Constitution, which I recommend people need to read the Constitution and the Bible, read them both. And I know people who don't believe in the Bible. I get that. That was just an old joke that my dad used to say, read the Constitution and the Bible. Read the Constitution. You don't know what your rights are until you read them. I mean, in fact, I'm going to go ahead. We tried to give out some tickets yesterday and nobody could answer my question. I asked you to tell me the number of how many young Black men are registered in college right now. Nobody can answer me. It's 1 million. We have 1 million young Black men in college at this moment. Here's my question for today. I still have the tickets on the table. I'm looking at Justine. She's shaking her head yes. I'm going to give these tickets to the first person who could call and tell me the 5 freedoms that we are guaranteed from the First Amendment. We have 5 of them from the First Amendment. The first person that can call and tell me that will get these tickets that I have on the table, because you cannot tell me that you understand this country if you don't understand your rights. When I ask people what's in the First Amendment, they say all kinds of things. Party and I have the right to be free. I'm like, that's not in the First Amendment. But the first person who can call and tell me the 5 freedoms that we are given from the First Amendment. Remember, it was Thomas Jefferson who said after we dealt with the 3 branches, it was time to deal with the people's rights. And the people's rights came through the amendments. This is where we amend the Constitution. It's a living document, folks. I remember the little bit of time that I was in law school. Remember my law professor telling us over and over and over again that the Constitution is flexible. It bends. It is a living document. And we add the amendments to then speak to where the people are moving. We take away the right to have alcohol. We got to give that back. We got to go into the amendments, get rid of American enslavement. We got to go into the amendments to make sure women can vote. 1920 with the 19th Amendment, making sure women can vote. We got to go back into the amendment, making sure that we don't have any kings, getting rid of folks in the 26th Amendment so folks can have term limits. We deal with the Constitution because it's living. It is a document that dictates what we do. Do you know your rights? That's what I'm asking. Give me a call. Let's talk about the 14th Amendment, because I am just appalled by the way that people think that because Donald Trump says it, it's just going to happen. I want to play. I'm asking my folks to play 8519, Dre. Can we get that clip in there? This is a clip of Donald Trump in this racist ad that he put out at this time. Folks, this man has always been out of control. We've now reached a point, I think, of no return. Let's take a listen to this clip and then we'll talk on the other side.
The president also doubling down on his false claim that he can end the constitutional guarantee of birthright citizenship, citing President Obama's executive order on Dreamers that his administration has said is illegal.
Certainly, if he can do DACA, we can do this by executive order.
So this is just a little piece. I urge you to go online and listen to the rest of it. That is just a little piece about this very racist ad that Donald Trump put out there. It is interesting because I think we have reached a point of no return. In my class, my stereotypes in U.S. film and television class, I actually teach my students about the First Amendment. And they're young people, of course, because they don't know. I'm like, you actually have rights. It's more than just one. You have 5 rights that come to you from the First Amendment. And if you don't know anything else, you should know that, because you should know what your rights are and what you can do, and also what the limitations are of your rights. How do you consider yourself or believe that you are a member of this particular country and this community, and this is a community of Americans, and you don't know your rights? I am not saying you should be able to spew off the 5th Amendment, which is very important, right? I plead the 5th, the right not to self-incriminate. You may not be able to spew off the amendment dealing with the quartering of troops. You may not know that, right? But there's some amendments you need to know. You need to know the First Amendment. You need to know the 5th Amendment. Folks, you need to know, if you are a person of color in this country, you need to know the 13th, the 14th, and the 15th Amendment. And if you are a woman or someone who supports women, you got to know the 19th Amendment. How do you know the amendment that gave us the right to vote in this country? You need to know. So I'm not saying you need to know every word, but you need to know those amendments, just my opinion. And you need to know what the branches of government do. You need to know that Donald Trump just can't willy-nilly change the Constitution because he feels like it. You got to know that. You got to know what branch makes the laws, which is why you got to get out and vote, because you're voting for the people who are making the laws. Yes, you need to know what branch of government enforces the law. That's Donald Trump. So when he sends those troops down to guard the border, he has the right to do that. That's afforded to him by the Constitution because he's part of the executive branch. He holds it up. And you gotta know that when we put those Supreme Court justices on, which is really forever, because they can make laws that can impact me and my kids and their kids, because we put them in there for life, but they have the power to actually evaluate and interpret the Constitution. A lot of power. And you need to know that. Let's go through. Let's talk about the First Amendment. Let's see what people have to say. Justina, I don't know who is first here. Let me know who should I take first. Justina, I believe, is it William? I'll take William first. William, oh no, Warren. Warren, how are you? Welcome to Today with Dr. K.
Hello, Doc. How are you?
I'm doing well. Want to talk to me about the First Amendment?
First Amendment, the freedom of religion.
Yes, you do. That Congress shall make no law abridging the free exercise of religion. That is correct.
Speech.
You do have the freedom of speech with some limitations, right? You can't yell fire in a crowded room, and now you can't yell you got a bomb on a plane. There are some limitations, and hate speech is a part of that as well.
And as Donald Trump tried to take away from us the freedom of press.
We do have the press, which is the press, the free exercise of the press. And what does that look like? And there are some limitations in terms of libel and slander. Hard to actually enforce those now because of the wow internet. But you just can't print up a bunch of lies about people.
No, you can't do that.
Mm-hmm. There are two more.
Freedom of petition.
Freedom, but
to the government.
Yes.
Petition the government on whatever they come up with.
Yes, you have the freedom to petition the government for redress of grievances. So, folks, if you don't like what the government is doing, you have the freedom to petition the government because you want to see some changes.
Yes.
And there's one more.
Overlooking the assembly, peaceful assembly.
There you go. You have the freedom for the people to peaceably assemble. Now, that doesn't mean you have the right to march wherever you want to. You need permits to do that. But you do have the freedom to peaceably assemble. Let me ask you something, Warren. I don't want other people to go as well. Tell me why it's important that people understand their rights. Why do you think that's important?
Because, to me, if you don't understand your rights, it's just like they say, if you don't fall for something, you fall for anything.
Absolutely.
When they take away your rights, you don't understand your rights. You are really giving the people the right to do anything that they want to do to you.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely. But now just because I want to add that just because you know your rights doesn't mean they won't do it to you, but at least you can put up a fight, right, Warren? At least you can fight them back if you know it.
Yes.
All right. Thank you so much, Warren. Hold on. Warren wins it. But I'm going to keep talking to everyone who called to answer the question because I want to know from you, why do you think it's important that we know this? Let me talk to Ali. Ali, how are you?
This afternoon.
I'm doing well. Thank you for calling. So talk to me about the importance of the First Amendment, because it seems like we're getting a little bit confused about what our rights are in this country.
Well, like the first caller spoke on, is that it's very important that we understand our rights and know our rights, because that way your rights can't be taken away from you. And that's one of the reasons, or not only taken away from you, but also information that can be said about what your rights are. But if you can't, if you can't verify that, or if you can't confirm that, then it's easily things can be put in place that could very well affect your life, your livelihood, your community, your family, and pretty much every aspect of your life. So it's essential that you understand your rights. And I think that's one of the things that we haven't always done, unfortunately, as African people in our community. But I'd like to take this a step further, if I may, Dr. K.
Yes.
One of the things I'm concerned with is that I totally understand that how we should participate, in the system that we live in, to the point to where to whatever change we can affect that change. But I think we can't lose sight of the fact that to me, I moved from positions just to really the democracy. I think it's more about this is more of I think the white men who are in charge live by the Darwin theory is what I'm trying to say.
Right.
It's survival of the fittest. I genuinely believe that, and I do understand that place and time dictate how people live among themselves. But I think at the end of the day, because he who has the biggest gun rule, and I think that unless we continue to begin to think in a way to really feel the necessary strategies to where we can protect ourselves, then we will always be at the mercy of those people who are being ruled.
I absolutely agree.
Because no rights, I mean, obviously they're necessary. I think we have to live by rights, but I think, we still have a very basic, primal nature, in man. That push comes to shove. If my gun is big as yours, then I'm going to take power.
Right. Well, we saw that during the Cold War, right?
Yeah,
and all the way to get people to stand down, you got to have 15 nuclear weapons. I have 15. If you get one more and you have 16, I have to get one more. The only way we can keep some type of detente is for everybody to have the same thing, no matter how destructive those weapons are.
Absolutely.
All right. I appreciate you, Ali. Thank you so much. We have Jewel on the phone. Jewel, how are you?
How are you? I'm well.
I'm doing well. So talk to me, Jewel, about the importance of the First Amendment and why you think people need to understand what their rights are.
Speaking from a millennial standpoint, I believe that it's necessary for people to understand the First Amendment, because if you don't know, if you don't educate yourself, if you don't seek the proper help to find out what your rights are, people will not tell the people. People who are holding power, they will use that as a disadvantage, and that will take away your opportunity to question, what my rights are, question what advantage do I have in this situation. And I can honestly say it wasn't until I started my undergrad matriculation at Bowie State that I got a deeper understanding of what my First Amendment rights were. I knew the basics, but it wasn't until I indulged in my political science classes and my government classes that helped me expand my knowledge on my First Amendment rights.
I completely agree with you. Thank you so much, Jewel. I have Nelson on the phone. Nelson's a new caller from Randallstown. Nelson, how are you?
I'm good, Dr. K. How are you?
I'm doing fine. We're just having a conversation here because people got a little bit confused about the 14th Amendment. I thought we had to go back to the beginning and talk about our amendments and why it's important that we know what our rights are.
Well, I actually called because I wanted to. I'm a student at CCDC in Catonsville.
Yes.
And I'm also an office clerk at the Maryland Department of the Environment. I've been busy. I've been listening to you for quite some time now, and I just wanted to name the First Amendment rights.
Would you be kind enough to do that? Go ahead. Thank you.
I would say that I'm going to say that, and there are 5. There are right to petition, right to assemble, right to protest peacefully, freedom of speech, and freedom of religion.
Let me ask you something, Nelson. I'm going to need you to hold on so I can get your information. In your opinion, which one of those do you think is the most important one? I have my students play a game. I see, if you had to lose one of these basic liberties, which is the one you think we absolutely cannot lose as Americans? Just as your opinion, that's all.
Well, I definitely think that, personally, I do need religion. I feel as though I need to practice what I want to practice. My Christian faith is very important to me. And I think that, my relationship with God is very important. It helps me through everything. And I feel like, nobody has the right to tell me, who my higher being should be, or, what I practice or what I should not practice, because everybody has a right to practice whatever religion they would like to practice.
All right, I got to stop you there, Nelson. Thank you. Hold on, Nelson, 1 second. Folks, when we come back very quickly, I want to hear from you. Out of the 5 of freedoms in the First Amendment, which one do you think is the most important? This is Today with Dr. K. Stay with us after the break. Here's an update from MTA.
Good afternoon. We've got some local link bus diversions. They include the Navy Line and 63 eastbound, diverted at Eastern and Leanwood, the Navy Line and 63 westbound, diverted at Eastern and East, and the Gold Line, diverted eastbound to Fleet and Boston. The broken water main repair continues. That causes the diversion of 79 eastbound at Tucker and Dickey Hill, 79 westbound, diverted to Forest Park and Windsor Mill. No problems on the MTA commuter buses. The light rail link is running on time, and we've got no problems on the Metro subway link. Get mobile, go faster, transfer free with a CharmPass mobile transit fare app, your new way to pay. For more information, mta.maryland.gov/CharmPass. For the MTA Transit Team, I'm Ken Berger on 88.9 FM WEAA, the voice of the community.
Join Robert Shahid as he shares the powerful elements that is music and its history on Masterclass, Monday through Friday at noon. You don't want to miss this culinary feast for your ears, only on WEAA 88.9 FM, the voice of the community.
Hello, I'm Claudette Lindsay, host of the Caribbean Exchange. In order to maintain a healthy discussion, we suggest a regular dose of the Caribbean Exchange. We will nourish your mind with everything from China's expanding role in the Caribbean to the cultural significance of carnival and steel pan music in the diaspora. That's every Saturday right here on Morgan State University Radio, 88.9 WEAA FM.
Celebrating 40 years of broadcasting, Morgan State University Public Radio, 88.9 WEAA FM and HD1, Baltimore.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Windsor Johnston. President Trump continues his campaign swing across the nation in a final push to drum up support for Republicans ahead of next Tuesday's midterms. He's scheduled to hold campaign events in Montana, Indiana, and Florida this week. NPR's Tamara Keith reports Trump will rally supporters in Missouri tonight.
President Trump has made it his mission to help defeat Democratic senators running for re-election in states he won in 2016, including Missouri. He will make one more stop there on Monday, the last in what will be an intense 4 days of campaigning. 2 rallies a day on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and 3 on Monday. His themes are now familiar, hitting hard on immigration, bashing the press, and Democrats. By Trump's own account, he expects GOP Senate candidates will fare well on Tuesday. But when it comes to the House, he says Republicans are just doing okay. He is largely focusing his efforts in these final days on helping Senate and gubernatorial candidates. Tamara Keith, NPR News, Washington.
The suspect charged in the deadly shooting at a Pennsylvania synagogue has pleaded not guilty. On Lee Herring from member station WESA reports Robert Bowers appeared in federal court today.
This was Robert Bowers' second court date since the Saturday attack that left 11 dead and 6 injured. He wore a red jumpsuit and was represented by 2 public defenders. During the 10-minute hearing, prosecutors read the 44 charges against him and told him he could face the death penalty. The suspect did not make eye contact with the attorneys, but appeared to listen intently. A grand jury charged him Wednesday with fatally preventing the free exercise of religion and committing firearms offenses. The government said in a complaint filed the night of the shooting that the accused gunman made anti-Semitic statements during the attack. The case is set to go to jury trial. For NPR News, I'm Onley Herring in Pittsburgh.
Open enrollment begins today for healthcare coverage through the Affordable Care Act. NPR's Allison Kojak reports the program is stable this year despite the Trump administration's efforts to weaken it.
The Trump administration reduced the enrollment period to about 6 weeks from last year, and those are for the states that are on the federal marketplace. Some states have their own marketplaces, and those have longer enrollment periods. But most analysts say they expect to see a similar level of enrollment. In states where there's longer enrollment periods and more marketing, like California or New York, they are likely to see maybe an uptick.
NPR's Allison Kojak reporting open enrollment for the Affordable Care Act ends on December 15th. At last check on Wall Street, the Dow Jones Industrial Average was up 264 points, the Nasdaq Composite up 128, the S&P 500 up 28. This is NPR News.
Heavy volume picking up on the outer loop of 695 between 83 and the JFX, and slow traffic between Security Boulevard and Edmondson Avenue. Congestion on the inner loop of 695 between York Road and Lock Raven Boulevard, and we're slow between Wilkins Avenue and Security Boulevard. You'll be tapping on those brakes if you're traveling northbound 895 at Harbor Tunnel and Holabird Avenue, and northbound 95 is sluggish between Skaggsville Road and 32, and again between Waterloo Road and 100. 70 east and west, you'll be incident-free with all lanes open in both directions between Frederick and Baltimore. 395 is wide open in both directions, traveling to and from the Inner Harbor. 795 is a smooth commute in both directions if you're traveling between Pikesville and Reisterstown. And 197, you'll have a quiet ride if you're traveling both north and southbound between 50 and 695. This report is sponsored by Unbound.org. For more traffic information, log on to sigalert.com. I'm Margot Burr with your Baltimore area traffic.
88.9 FM reminds you that the views expressed on WEAA programs are those of participants and not necessarily those of Morgan State University, the staff, management, or underwriters of Baltimore's home for cool jazz. WEAA 88.9 FM.
Welcome back to Today with Dr. K. I'm Dr. K. Wise Whitehead. Folks, we began this show by talking about the 14th Amendment and why we have to really understand and know our rights. People were up in arms after Donald Trump and his very racist ad and his attack on the 14th Amendment. And there was this concern that just because Donald Trump says it, just because he issues an executive order, that Donald Trump has the power to change the Constitution. I think that is alarming. And then I will ring this bell as long as I can ring it about the importance of teaching civics in school. We need to know our rights. Donald Trump heads up the executive branch of the government. The executive branch does not have the ability to make laws. It does not have the ability to interpret laws. Donald Trump in the executive branch only has the ability, the right as afforded to them by our Constitution to enforce the laws. The legislative branch, Congress, they are the ones who actually write and pass legislation, our laws, and the judicial branch, which is our court system, has the ability to evaluate the laws passed by the legislative branch and determine whether or not they comply with the Constitution. I gave an example at the top of the show. I'm going to give it again. I'm going to take your calls, 410-319-8888. Think about what happened during the time of Jim Crow in this country. They were pushing cases up. Thurgood Marshall and his team kept pushing cases up. They were all part of the NAACP Legal Defense Fund. The case Brown v. Board, which was a compilation of cases, it wasn't just one case, it was a compilation of cases. When they ruled in 1954, they ruled that legalized segregation was unconstitutional. It was illegal. It had to stop. Now, they then set up for Brown 2, which came out in 1955. Brown 2 was when they set like a timeline in place. That's when we get the phrase, for schools to integrate, quote, with all deliberate speed. That was in Brown 2, which happened in 1955. But once they put that in place, Congress began to work on the dismantling of laws that legalized segregation. But there were places across the South, I'm thinking Alabama, Mississippi, Arkansas, places where you had white men in particular in power who did not want to cede the power that they no longer had to legally separate Black and white people in places like schools or restaurants or on the trains or in buses, right? So even though the Supreme Court said it was unconstitutional, even though Congress is running to catch up, you still had governors like Governor Wallace saying, I'm going to keep segregation yesterday, today, tomorrow, forever. I'm not going to let Black kids go to school at Little Rock. I'm not going to let Black folks go into the restaurant. I'm not going to allow them to come into our universities. It took the executive branch sending down the National Guard to enforce the law. That is a real world example of what it looks like when all three branches are working together. One branch does not have all that power. So let's not get confused by Donald Trump's very racist spews and believe that just because he says it, it's going to happen. He is not a magician, folks. He is not the all supreme powerful being that he believes, and some of us, unfortunately, are starting to believe. That is what my concern is. Let's talk about that. 410-319-8888. I have Liz on the phone. Liz, how are you? Liz, are you with us? All right, I can't hear Liz. Let us move on to Kim from Randallstown. Kim, how are you?
Hi, I'm fine, thank you. Thank you for taking my call.
Absolutely. Thank you for calling in.
You asked a question about which one in the First Amendment would I say was the most important?
Yes, ma'am.
And probably to petition the government Because without that, having that, you're able to maybe get something else that you want.
Right.
But if you don't have the ability to petition the government, then you have to accept everything the government says.
That's interesting. That's it. Now, let me ask you this, Kim, with that, because by selecting that one, which, by the way, is the one that when we do all these kind of research tests around the country, that's the one that people are least likely to remember. Everybody remembers, I have the freedom of speech. They know freedom of the press. That's the one that people are least likely to remember. So you think the petition the government for redress of grievances is even more important than our freedom of speech and press and religion?
Yeah, because I feel if we have that, we can gain those other things.
Okay.
But without that, then we have no recourse.
All right.
Except we assemble and protest and write about it and speak about it.
Right. And to write and speak about it, we need those other freedoms. Kim, I appreciate you calling from Randallstown. We have David Anthony Wiggins calling in from Baltimore City. David, how are you? Welcome.
Hey, how are you?
I was thinking about you last night because I was looking at my ballot, getting ready to get my voting in, and I saw your name down there for sheriff. I was like, he calls my show all the time.
Yes, I do. And I would like to say this to you, that you're talking about the First Amendment, but the most important amendment in the Constitution is not the First Amendment. It's the Ninth Amendment. And the Ninth Amendment is important because it is the rights retained by the people.
Yes.
And it says the enumeration in this Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people. You understand? You have rights that aren't enumerated, that are God-given rights. No state has a right. No government has a right. Only the people have rights because rights come from God.
Right.
Government has power. Government has duties and responsibilities because the people come together and they contract. And they come together and make a government. So my question to you and your listeners would be, is citizenship in the United States voluntary or coercive? Because if citizenship is coercive, then you're a slave.
Right.
If citizenship is voluntary, then you have free association to not to be a part of. And this is why the Maryland Declaration of Rights, Article 1, is so important to the people of Maryland, because Maryland recognizes that government is voluntary and all government of right is by compact only. That means you contract with the government.
Right.
And then the Maryland Declaration of Rights also recognizes natural law at Article 36 of the Maryland Declaration of Rights. And natural law means that you have a right and a duty to worship God in the way that you see fit, as long as you're not violating, check this out, the natural, civil, or statutory rights of another person. So Maryland recognizes natural law. Maryland has the best constitution. It's better than the United States Constitution, actually. But we don't seem to honor it here.
No, I think people are not even aware of it. And I'm not talking about everyone, David. I want to be clear. I don't want to draw the big blanket. I'm saying, but people how many people do you know are actually reading and studying either the Constitution of the United States or their own state constitution?
Well, and this is what the 14th Amendment did. It overturned Dred Scott.
Yes, all of that.
It overturned that. And unless the Constitution, and this is, unless you signed the United States Constitution or unless you joined the military and swore an oath to defend the Constitution, you're not obligated to follow the Constitution, and it doesn't protect you. This is why when people go into the federal courts, they can't get a remedy. They can't get relief because they say that the federal courts don't have jurisdiction over some of the issues. And that is a problem that we have here. We don't understand that citizenship is not coercive.
Right.
It's voluntary. And you have rights that aren't enumerated in the Constitution.
I appreciate
That's why the 9th and 10th Amendment are so important, more important than the First Amendment or the Second Amendment.
And this is what's laying it out. David Anthony Wiggins, I appreciate that. I look forward to speaking with you on November 7th, seeing what happens and how it goes down.
Okay.
Thank you so much, sir. Folks, this is why you need to read the Constitution. I keep talking about that. I mean, David Anthony Wiggins is talking about those reserved powers, the ones that are not spelled out. You have some natural rights and power versus the express powers, which are the ones stated in the Constitution. Do you know what your rights are? I mean, I was just drilling down with the First Amendment only because we started with the 14th Amendment and we have worked our way. I mean, I think it's important that you understand what your rights are. We're going to continue with this conversation. And don't forget, in this hour, we are going to talk about Baltimore City and what's been happening in the last 90 days. We've had 97 people killed, including last night a 13-year-old boy. We're going to talk about that shortly once we wrap our discussion on this Constitution, the rights, our amendments, and the fact that Donald Trump is not God. Let's be very clear about that. We have Carol on phone. Carol's a new caller from Randallstown. Carol, welcome to the family.
Well, thank you very much. I've heard your program several times, but I've never called in.
I'm glad you called.
And the reason I would like to speak with you is about the perception of the 14th Amendment.
Yes.
What concerns me is that there are so many people who maybe historically have not been included, and so therefore feel that that guarantees anybody in the world that's born in this country citizenship.
Right.
And the problem is that there are wealthy Chinese. There was something on one of the television programs about 3 years ago, coming into this country pregnant with the express purpose of giving birth so that they have the rights of an American citizen, the rights of children of soldiers who fought, shed blood, people that had to fight for their rights for years and years. And they're coming into this country, giving birth, going back to China, going back to other countries. They have now American citizenship for these babies, and no loyalty to the country. And it really concerns me that many of your listeners don't realize that. It's nice to want to include everybody, but if you don't have a love for this country and you don't respect the citizens of this country already, do you really think it's right for someone to be able to come in like that?
Okay,
Just
well,
have citizenship just because they gave birth on American soil? It just doesn't seem right. Most countries in the world do not have that.
Now, wait a minute now. I just want to make sure that we're talking about the same thing here, Carol, because with the 14th Amendment, it talks about people who are born or naturalized in the United States. I mean, I pulled the 14th Amendment out because I wanted to make sure that as I follow along what you're saying, that we're talking about the same thing, because the 14th Amendment expressly says all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. So even if you have a baby, if you are not a citizen, your child is. So you're talking about the child that's born becoming a citizen or the person giving birth? I'm not clear on the question.
I'm talking about it, and this is what is happening now. I'm talking about the children of someone who comes in with a tourist visa, has no allegiance to the United States of America,
but has a baby,
wants to give birth to a child, so that child can appropriate the rights of an American citizen,
which is stated in the 14th Amendment. Now, why are you saying that they don't have a love for the country? Like, how do you know that child won't grow up with a love for the country in which they were born in?
Well, of course, we can't say that.
Right. Well, you said, you actually said they don't have a love of the country. You said that.
But what I'm talking about is they give birth and then they go back to their country.
But their child is, according to our Constitution, their child is a citizen, because it says persons born or naturalized. It's not the child's decision. If you're in your mom's belly, you have no choice on where you're born. If your mom chooses to come here, tourist visa or not, and gives birth to you in this country, according to our Constitution, you are a citizen of the United States and of the state wherein you reside. That's just that clear.
So we're residing in the state. If they're residing in China or wherever,
but they're still citizens because they were born here.
They're
not
citizens subject to the laws of the United States, and they're not subject.
But they're still
to the
citizens until we change it.
But what they can do is appropriate all the rights.
Yes, they can.
Hard-earned rights.
Because they are citizens
American
according to this
citizens.
Constitution. See, when we start talking about the hard-earned rights and who deserves it and what does that mean, I just want to go back to the Constitution because that's why the 14th Amendment was set in place. If you are born in this country or naturalized, you are a citizen, and therefore you are extended and afforded all the hard-earned rights of everybody else who's born or naturalized here. It's just that it's what the Constitution. So until we change that, we can't really argue apples on whether they should or they shouldn't get. Because right now, they do get it because that's what the Constitution says. Thank you so much for calling, Carol. We have Patricia on the phone. She's a new caller from Colorado. Patricia, how are you?
I'm doing fine. I grew up in Baltimore, and I was in the military for about 12 years.
I thank you for calling. Well, welcome back to your call back home here, Carol.
Well,
Patricia.
When people talk about the 14th Amendment, for the fact that's the case, President Trump people came from overseas.
Mm-hmm.
And his grandfather originally came out of Germany.
Come on.
And I was stationed in Germany for 8 years. And they kicked his grandfather out of Germany in 1895 because the fool refused to serve the military. So this stuff about all this patriotism is a joke. And number two, I think the most important amendment, actually the 10th, is completely states the power to delegate the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited to the states or reserved to the states respectively or to the people. And what I'm saying is I'm hearing all this crap about they taking people babies.
I know. Oh my word. Yes.
And the love of the country. I was in the military. You hear all the people on TV about they love the military.
Yes.
Most people who served military fought in battles were black people.
Yes.
And people of color.
Come on.
And they don't talk about that. I was in the military for 12 years, and I'm sick of hearing this crap about love. Like a lady love her country. I guarantee nobody in her family ever served in the military.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad you called, Colorado. Go ahead. I'm listening.
The first, the second, the fourth, and fifth are amendments they need to learn as well. But the most important one, they need to read Amendment 10. The power not delegate the United States by the Constitution nor prohibited by it to the states are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. And what I'm also saying, you got a lot of people, I was talking to a lot of young people I work with, they on their social media, Facebook. You can go buy a U.S. Constitution at the bookstore for about $2.
Yeah, and then you can get it and you can read it. Because you know what, Patricia, you have just hit it. People want to argue about the Constitution. If it's in the Constitution right now, the Constitution says if you're born here, you are a citizen. What are we debating? So we want to go back because that is what the dangerous part of it is, I think.
Well, we know what also? People, when I was military, when President Bush's father, George the Senior, his father was Prescott Bush. He was a Nazi. If you recall, when George Bush Sr. got in office, the first thing out of his mouth said, the New World Order. And that's exactly what Hitler stated. So
I did hear that, yes.
It's been going on for a long time.
It's been going on.
People got their head in the sand. They're on Facebook, Snapchat, Twitter, all this BS. But I'm telling you, you had a guy earlier say, people need to arm themselves. Because, you arm yourself, but you got to know what you're doing. But they need to learn their rights.
All right, I'm gonna stop you there, Patricia. Thank you so much. So, folks, with the arming themselves, because we talk about these guns on this show, which I'm always open to the conversation. But if we could just tweak that just for a minute and talk about arming ourselves with knowledge, because I think part of the discussion that we're having is that people don't understand what it says in the document. Wasn't it Frederick Douglass who said, people perish for lack of knowledge? I mean, I think it actually comes out of the Bible, and Frederick Douglass talked about that. We need to know what it says. We cannot argue over a woman coming from China and having a baby here, a woman coming from Mexico. We can't argue about that because the Constitution says if the baby's born here, the baby is a citizen, period. I mean, we can't question their love because if we're questioning love, I got a lot of people who I want to question your love of this country. Seriously, I have a lot of people I want to do that for. But if you're born in this country, you are a citizen. If you're naturalized in this country, you are a citizen. And according to the Immigration and Naturalization Act, if you're born to an American mother, which means that when women would be in the military or they would be the wives of people serving in the military, I'm in China and I'm pregnant, I give birth in China, my child is still an American citizen. Come on, folks, we got to be clear about these things. We have Sarah on the phone. Sarah's a new caller from Baltimore. Sarah, welcome to the family. Hello, Sarah. How are you? All right, Sarah, hold on. I don't know what's happening with line 1. They will work on that. We'll keep going with our calls. We have Ayana on the phone. Ayana's a school teacher here in Baltimore. Ayana, how are you?
Hi, Dr. K. How are you?
I'm doing fine. I rang the bell because I'm ringing the bell for all teachers today just to thank you for your service.
Hey. I just want to say that I love your show and
Thank you.
contribute to your drive.
I appreciate that.
You had my dear friend Jonathan Ball on there. I was so happy to
yes.
for celebrating artists.
Thank
But
you.
I just wanted to say, I literally just left my classroom and I turned on the radio and heard that caller previously, sounding, and I apologize for just extremely asinine in her statement about the child being, the comment about the babies and the mothers and the things like that.
Yes.
And I just think that, it's funny, as American as we think we are based upon whatever we're using to say that, we don't know our history.
No.
We don't know our history, because if we knew our history, then we would be very, very careful and watch our privilege when we say
yes.
who serves what.
Yes.
Because this land was stolen. This land was not America, okay? It was completely stolen, and people that are here were all immigrants. It's a country of immigrants. Everyone came here because you're tired, you're poor,
you're weak, and you're hungry masses. Yes, yes.
Journey to be free, but guess what? That was only for white immigrants.
That's
okay.
it.
European immigrants. Okay. So when there are people of color, all of a sudden, there's all of this concern. They don't love and the babies. And
yes. And we're questioning their love. We're questioning their work ethic. We want to question that. Have you noticed now, Ayana? We want to question that work ethic, love, the patriotism to the country, to everybody who's not white. Because isn't that an argument that people make for black people? We don't love the country enough.
What we need to do is we need to really, I even tell my students, because I teach African American studies at my school, and I tell the students, it dawned on me. I know that Latino Americans are have Native American ancestry, but I have never in my life met a Native American citizen, and I think that's very telling.
That is very telling
to the history of what happened to these native people that were completely accosted, stolen, and genocide was committed.
Yes, and they're still living on reservations to this day. Come on, let's be very clear.
And I think it's hypocritical and insanity.
Yeah, it is.
That you are some type of, you're entitled to this, and you are the quintessential American. When it's a thievery. It's a stolen.
Yes, but you thank you so much, Ayana, that you are entitled to something that somebody else stole. Thank you. You can cut Ayana off because I'm getting some back from her radio. Just think about that, folks. So if my mother steals a house and she takes everybody out who lives in the house, she gets rid of all of them, locks them in the basement, and I get the house. Can I actually say that that's my house and I'm entitled to the house when truly I'm only benefiting from the fact that my mother stole the house? Now, my mother's not a thief. I'm using that as an example. Aren't we seeing that play out? When we start questioning people's love and patriotism, that only seems to happen with people of color. I think if black folks love this country anymore, folks, how much more can we prove our love? And I think we should talk about what that means when we start talking about people who are undocumented, people that look a lot like a lot of us. 410-319-8888. When I come back, Sarah, I'm going to take you and Najee, Shaka, Larry, Simon, and you two folks can join the conversation. It's Today with Dr. K. I'm Dr. K. Stay with us.
What's up? It's Mark Clark from Mornings with Mikkel, and I just want to say thank you so much for all those contributions you made for our fund drive. This fall fund drive was so successful because of YOU. I can't say enough about your continued support as we try to do something special here at WEAA, and of course, it can't be possible without you. So again, thank you so much for your contributions for this fall fund drive, and we look forward to entertaining you every morning on Mornings with Mikkel and all day long on WEAA.
Tune in to WEAA tonight at 10 p.m. for a special broadcast of the Hip Hop Chronicles Respect My Vote Tiny Hall discussion held at the WEAA studios, and find out why you need to get out and vote. From Reverend Yearwood from the Hip Hop Caucus, Catalina Bird, Donnie Glover, Jill P. Carter, Lil Key, Aaron Maben, Derek Chase, and me, Mike Nice. That's tonight at 10 p.m. right here on WEAA 88.9 FM and WEAA.org.
Every day, there are musically gifted young people who aspire to be in the spotlight. They dream to be just as successful as the artists who inspired them to create their very own music. Join Robert Shahid in Masterclass as he highlights such gifted individuals that absolutely need to be heard. Monday through Friday at noon, only on WEAA 88.9 FM, the voice of the community.
Your source for cool jazz and more. WEAA 88.9 FM, the voice of the community.
Welcome back to Today with Dr. K. I'm Dr. K. Wise Whitehead. I just want to note that we were going to talk about violence in Baltimore City. I've decided to hold on that conversation till tomorrow. I think this conversation we're having now about our rights, I think we need to continue with that because we've got to do some corrective work here. We know we have young people listening, and we need to be clear about what our rights are in this country. Rights that are extended to us, one, by the Constitution, and two, as David Anthony Wiggins pointed out, some of our natural rights that have nothing to do with the express powers in the Constitution. We need to understand that the state that we're living in participates in this idea of democracy. Now, we know that we are a republic. I get that. But Maryland is a part of this country. Have you taken a look at the Maryland Constitution? I want to thank Lou Fields, who pointed out to me and reminded me that today, November 1st, 154 years ago, November 1st, 1864, after a year-long debate, Maryland state constitution abolished slavery here in Maryland. It happened today. Lou Fields pointed that out to me, and I'm like, we need to keep talking about our rights. What better way to just understand and appreciate what happened in this state in 1864 than to continue to talk about our rights? That's why those amendments are important. The 14th Amendment was so important because it dealt with citizenship for Black folks, people. The 13th Amendment is what ended American enslavement, except, of course, in prisons. The 14th Amendment talked about who was a citizen. Think about Dred Scott. Dred Scott, that case clearly said that Blacks had no rights, that whites were bound to respect. Dred Scott, that case said we were not citizens. We had no standing in courts. So when we start talking about these amendments, I think Black people in particular need to be real clear about a number of these amendments and how they were applied to us and what that meant. That's why I get a little nervous when people start talking about changing things, even though Donald Trump doesn't have the power, the fact that he's put it as a conversation point on the table. Dred Scott v. Sanford was a case, of course, in 1857. It was about the rights of an enslaved Black man whose plantation owner had taken him into a free state, and him and his wife sued for their freedom. They didn't get it. 1896 was Plessy v. Ferguson, which set up legal segregation in this country. You got to know the history. It is very important. We have Sarah. Sarah called back. Sorry about dropping you before, Sarah. Welcome to the family.
Oh, thank you. No problem. I have a question actually that's pertaining to the first thing that you were discussing about the that you do with your students.
Yes.
About which right that you would not like to, or that you would least want to lose.
Right.
And I was thinking about that a lot, and I think those, especially those 5 that you were discussing, are so interwoven that I'm not sure, even if you decided to take away one, would you still truly have the 4 remaining? For if you did take away the right of religion, would we still have freedom of the press?
Yeah.
would we still have freedom to petition? Because, there would be an entire, huge job of conversation that would be, I suppose, forbidden or would have been made into law.
Right.
And would we be able to petition, religion? Would be able to assemble peacefully.
And I'm glad you said that, Sarah, because that's actually where I want my students to get to. Because they start off, and it's just interesting because they actually start off, we can just get rid of religion, until somebody says, well, what does that mean? That they're going to force us to practice or worship one God? And when they start pulling out each piece and realizing what they lose, I want them to get to a point where they understand not just that the First Amendment is all interwoven as our basic liberties, but keep looking at look at the story that the amendments tell about the development of our country. So it's just interesting for them. I mean, my students get shocked when they realize before we got the right to vote as women, we had to get up to 19th Amendment. Look how long that took from the time we were dealing with the amendments up until we got to 1920. Like, it's amazing to them. What does the amendments say about how our country very slowly begin to develop and extend rights to people?
Wow. Well, I want to thank you for just bringing up this entire line of conversation, because it's just showing me what it is that I need to think about and learn, and I think it's helping a lot of people.
Thank you so much,
I
Sarah.
wanted to thank you.
I appreciate you. Thank you so much. We have Larry on the phone from Pikesville. Larry, how are you?
I'm fine. Doctor, you have the ultimate classroom. So we learn, we study, we discuss, and we are enlightened.
Thank you.
I just want to bring up a couple of facts. That our enemy plays the long run. The long run. The lady mentioned earlier about people being born in this country. Well, there is a program where individuals from countries that are opposed to us have children here and go back home. Well, the Trojan horse is a reminder that if you take the child is born here, becomes a citizen, goes home, and is totally indoctrinated to policies totally opposed to our freedom, comes back to this country as a young person after college, goes through the process of developing themselves into the ultimate candidate.
Right.
And then went for president. But they have been brainwashed. They have been indoctrinated to protect their country. And so they become president of the United States. But now you have an alien in mental state running our country.
Right. That's the long game.
Why that process that we're talking about foreigners coming in this country, having a baby, going home, and that person is now an American citizen, they play the long run.
Yeah.
20 years from now, that person's an adult, college graduate. Now they're here, and that's not just black folk. We're talking about Russia. We're talking about all of the other countries that are opposed to us. That is a thought that we should be thinking about when we look at this policy.
Right.
Secondly, Scripture tells us that destruction of most nations come from within.
Yes, it does.
That person will now be within our nation and have all the opportunity to destroy us because they played the long game, and now they are in a position of authority, and their whole idea is to protect their country, not ours.
Right.
And another person mentioned that Christ didn't mention immigrants in the Bible. That he did. He called them strangers.
Yes, he did.
If a stranger enter your midst,
yes,
they should eat your food, learn your language, and intermingle with you. Otherwise, they remain strangers. He said we should welcome strangers, but they should adopt our way of life, not theirs.
Right. Oh, I like you pointing that out.
Our scripture mentions he called the immigrants, he called them strangers.
Yes.
Treat them kindly, but they should become part of you, not remain who they are.
Right.
They should learn your language, eat your food, and practice your customs.
And be a part. I like that.
The scripture didn't mention immigrants. He just called them strangers.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you. I thank you so much, Larry. We have Shaka on the phone from Laurel. Shaka, how are you?
I'm fine, Dr. K. How are you?
I'm doing fine. Thank you for calling.
I'm going to wait a minute and let you ring the bells, Dr. K, because I too am a teacher.
I am lifting up the teachers for their service today. Thank you for your service.
Ringy dingy dingy. Thank you very much. Well, Dr. K, I want to tell a very short story, kind of illustrate this thing about the Constitution. When I was a student at Lincoln University.
I went to Lincoln University. Wait a minute. I'm ringing a bell all over the place now. What year did you graduate from Lincoln University? I was class of 1991, Lincoln University.
1982.
There you go.
I'm ahead of you. All right. Okay. So I don't know if Dr. Winchester was there when you were
yes,
there.
Dr. Winchester is the reason why I became a history major. Come on, our life is really overlapping here. He was my college advisor.
Okay, well, I took a class with him, and I remember the midterm exam was on the Constitution. And I remember a bunch of us over in Ashman Hall studying like crazy, quizzing each other. Then we get to Dr. Winchester's class, and there's only one question on the test. And the question was, what does the Constitution say? And for the next 2 hours, all these young scholars, including myself, we unloaded a lot of ink on a lot of paper. And all of us flunked the test. Dr. Winchester explained to us, the Constitution says whatever the Supreme Court says, it says. And you mentioned earlier about Dred Scott and Plessy.
Yes.
And then don't forget about Brown versus Board of Education, right?
Yes.
Plessy, the Constitution, according to that court, said that separate but equal is constitutional.
Yes.
In 1954, the same document, a different court says it's unconstitutional. Yes. So we can argue about what the Constitution says, but the Constitution says whatever the Supreme Court says it says, and the Supreme Court right now is lopsided on the conservative side.
I'm telling you, first of all, I just want to say, Shaka, that you have brought some things back to my remembrance, because I remember that same exam with Dr. Dick Winchester. For those of you who went to Lincoln University, you remember him. He helped to integrate, I think, the hotel in Lincoln University, Pennsylvania. But I remember that, and I remember that discussion that he would have and bang it over our heads about the power of the Supreme Court, that only the Supreme Court can overturn the Supreme Court.
That's right.
New court has to come in and they have to reinterpret the same. It's not new laws. They're just reinterpreting them. You're absolutely right. Thank you so much, Shaka. I appreciate you. Folks, give me a call, 410-319-8888. You and I might have some connections. I'm open to hearing them today. I have Anaje on the phone. Anaje from Baltimore. How are you?
Hi, Dr. K. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
And I tell you, Larry and the caller before him had great points.
Yes, they did.
Is that the Constitution is very imperfect.
Yeah,
and
it is.
It's the gentlemen and the ladies who sit on the Supreme Court that really decide what is the meaning of the Constitution. But back to the other caller's point about anchor babies and the Chinese anchor babies that was her issue. And it's a very contradictory dilemma, because there, if I'm not mistaken, there is a special law that Filipino children that are born of American servicemen are not afforded those constitutional rights, even though their fathers are citizens of this country. And that is probably what the hypocrisy that she's trying to illuminate to us, that, you know, if you're just coming over to this country as a tourist and you have a baby because you want to have that baby to secure American rights, if that's possible, why is it not afforded in some other situations where children are being born of Americans and they're not afforded those rights that these babies are, just because of place of birth?
Well, it's interesting because, you know, she was trying to get into this notion of what they call, and there's actually a term for it, which is called maternity tourism. And it was dealing with wealthy women from China. What got, I think, her discussion points so convoluted when you start getting into, you know, who loves the country, how much they love the country, these hard-earned rights, then it starts to veer off from the essential point, which really was a big issue in California under Jeb Bush. Can we crack down on what they call maternity tourism, coming in as a wealthy Chinese woman at that point, living with a white family in California to have your children born in this country so they can have the ability to have all the rights that are afforded to American citizens.
Okay, and it would seem that you should be able to afford that across the board.
Right.
I would suppose.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And that's where it really became very controversial in California about who has the right to do that. First, you have to have, because these are wealthy women. So how much is being exchanged for this process to take place? What else is happening? Who has the right to stay and who doesn't? If you don't have the money and you come over and you have your child here, are you still able to tap into it and say the way a wealthy Chinese woman is versus someone who is economically challenged coming from Puerto Rico, for example? Not Puerto Rico, because that's one of an extension of the United States. I'm saying coming across from countries where you are not a citizen of our country. Let's be clear. Okay. All right. Thank you so much. Folks, not Puerto Rico. Don't call me and tell me I know that. We have Simon from White Marsh. Simon, how are you?
Hi, afternoon, Dr. K. I'm just going to be the devil's advocate here.
Okay, we always need one.
One of the founding fathers, Alexander Hamilton, was born in the Caribbean. He was born in St. Kitts.
I would say because of Hamilton, he's now my favorite founding father, only because I love the musical.
He was born in St. Kitts, and he came here as a teenager because I think he was adopted by a rich person.
Yeah, so they raised money, sent him over.
Because the person was rich, then he became an American and he founded the country. I mean, come on now. I mean, so
but it does. I mean,
I'm just going to leave that out there.
I'm glad you did. I think that. I mean, I don't know anyone who's listened to the musical Hamilton. There's one line that I just think is just so profound when Hamilton and I believe one of the other characters, I believe from France, says, "Immigrants, we get the job done." This idea that if you are in this country, if you are not a native person to this country, if you're not a native citizen, so Native American, then in a sense, aren't we all immigrants, Simon?
Yeah, but I mean, our hero John McCain was born in Panama on a military base. So what?
But I think the question that we're really debating here, which is really interesting, goes back to who has the right to claim the label of American. What does that mean? Right. You know, who gets afforded that right? And I feel that in this country, people who are not of color have been policing the term American for years, hundreds of years.
I did all of my civics exams. I went through the system. I did everything, and I am a proud American citizen. If I see you getting hurt by any means, foreign or domestic, I'm going to step in because I think that's what I raised my hand for. But of course, I have an accent and I'm black, so people might think that I'm.
But then there are questions about your patriotism, about your citizenship, which I think, I just think that these are really emotional questions, and it's trying to find a way to talk through it so that people can figure out where they stand. Aside from all the emotion and the rhetoric, where do you really stand on what it means to be an American, and who has a right to claim that title?
Well, I hate to put it this way, but it is quite possible for somebody, a Caucasian-looking person who is not in this country legally, to be considered an American. And you, Dr. K, who was born here, you might be considered an immigrant.
Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely.
I mean, they might get a job before you and everything like that. I mean,
all the research shows that does matter, that there are questions. I mean, why is it that so often Black people here go back to Africa? I mean, Black Americans, we hear that as if this is not our country. And we had this conversation on my show and people got upset with me. I'm like, and then there's nothing wrong with that. Of course, I've been to the motherland a number of times, but I am an American. This is my country. I mean, the good, the bad, and the ugly. This is my home. When I go to Ghana, as I've done, or I lived in Kenya for a while, every time I did that, Simon, I wanted to come back to my home. Well, America is my home.
Look at Columbus. Columbus got lost on his way.
Yes, he did. Come on.
He ended up in the Caribbean. He met the Karen Arawak Indians there. So because he was West, he called the West Indies.
Yes.
The guy was a bad sailor. He got lost and he was ruthless. He killed everybody in his path. And now he's a hero.
And that's why there should be no holiday, no days named after him. Simon, thank you so much. We have Robin on the phone from Baltimore. Robin, how are you?
Pretty good today, Dr. K. How are you?
I'm doing fine. Thank you for calling.
I think this discussion is interesting and that it may open people's minds and motivate them to learn their history. But beyond all of that, this is a distraction.
Yeah.
Trump does not have the right to change the amendment.
No, he does not. Thank you, Robert. Please say it again for the people in the back of the room, because apparently people don't hear it.
This is a distraction. This is to keep us from voting. This is to keep us talking and whining about this so that we don't vote, so that we don't realize what he's done. Look at my left hand so you don't see what my right hand is
absolutely.
doing. He does not have the right to change it, period. So no matter what he says, this is just a conversation because it's not going to happen.
Well, why is it though, Robin, that for some reason people tend to give this man, I'm talking about Trump, to give him powers that has never been extended to any other president? Because they definitely weren't extended to Barack Obama. I mean, it seemed like he was powerless.
Because he's, number one, because he's white. Number two, because somebody else is being paid. They are making money off of him because he is making money off of the presidency, which is illegal.
Yes,
and
he
the
is.
money rolls downhill. They're not following him because they think that he is articulate or intelligent.
No.
Or is the best speaker.
Nope, not at all.
The best student. The man is dumb as a box of rocks.
Yeah, he really is.
Smart enough to motivate people and motivate them by their greed.
Yes.
Because they are all making
their
money
greed
off.
and their hatred. I'm going to add that in there. Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Oh, man. I mean, so the question is, though, how do you fight someone like him? To me, you fight by going out and voting, by participating in the process. You fight by trying to educate the next generation to what's happening. Because right now, when they start talking about impeachment, I'm like, folks, take impeachment off the table. Because apparently that's not happening. He's going to get through the next couple of years, right?
That's not going to happen.
No.
He's going to finish out his 4 years.
He's going to finish out. And if we don't watch it, he's going to get another 4 years.
Yes, ma'am. The only way to stop him
Yep.
is by voting in people who have good and common sense. Because
Yes.
common sense ain't common.
No, it's not.
So we have to vote people in the office who actually have some morals and some values and some ethics.
Because the people we vote in the office will be there when this man comes up for re-election. The people we vote in, they're going to have a lot of power in a couple of years.
Yes, ma'am.
Yep.
So we got to make sure that we vote in the right people.
All right.
People who support us.
I appreciate you, Robin. And I just want to thank you so much, Robin. I just want to make a note, folks, just so we can be clear. I am not saying that we can only vote for people who actually support everything that we believe in. You will not find a candidate who supports everything you believe in. If you want that candidate, then you need to run. What you want to find when you're out there is find someone who shares some of the same morals and values and this same idea about the direction of this country. They may not agree with everything that you believe in, but who do you want to put your support behind? I mean, at this point, I am in support of people who are in opposition to this particular government that's in office right now. I don't want any Trump supporters getting in on my watch. I don't. I'm not going to throw away my vote and let more Trump supporters who believe in division, who believe in trying to take this country back where we don't even recognize anymore, who believe in the foolishness that he spews. We've got to make sure that we're not putting more of those people in office. We have Ronald on the phone. Ronald, how are you?
I'm fine. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you.
I was sitting in my car eating my little lunch here, and I was listening to the radio station, and I heard you speaking about the Constitution, and I just wanted to air my thoughts on what we do for the American Legion. We have an oratorical contest, high school level, that's built off of the Constitution of the United States, and we have a very difficult time getting students from the city to participate in that program, and it's been one that's been going on for at least 100 years. And me, as the chairman of the Baltimore district, which represents the city, every high school I go to and speak to the counselors and ask them for a student that can participate or handle this contest.
Right.
It's all a negative attitude from the counselors.
Really?
I'm saying to myself, well, how do our black generation, young people coming up, or ever going to understand the Constitution itself? And so that's my dilemma. I've been dealing with this oratorical, having these contests for the past 15 years.
Really? Now, when is the next one, Ronald? Because I would love to look to have some of those young people on the show. I'd love to hear from them.
Well, Sure.
and the work they're doing.
The contest is scheduled for January the 7th, 2019 at the War Memorial Building. The doors will open at 6. Right now, I have 3 contestants, and hopefully I can hold on to them 3 because they find it difficult to do their studies and then prepare themselves for this contest because they have to do everything out of memory. Once they do their 8 to 10 minute oration that they prepare for the first round, it has to be out of memory, anything of their choice of the Constitution. And then the second phase, our national organization draws 4 topics out of the Constitution, and they have to be prepared to do one of the 4 the same night on the second phase of the contest. So it's 5 topics that they will build in their head. And our goal is to get them involved into the Constitution so that they can be a part of conversations and of the Constitution, and they know how our government is operating. And again, it's a difficult task when I go to these schools and the counselors are just not getting it. I have to almost wait for kids to come outside from school. So what grade you in? It doesn't matter if we take it from the 9th to the 12th grade. So what grade are you in? Because I try to stay away from the seniors because they can only go one time.
Right. Well, what I'm going to have you do, Ronald, is I'm going to have you hold on because I want to get your information. We'd like to follow that. Anything that helps young people here in Baltimore City learn the Constitution, learn their rights. And if they can recite it from memory, they begin to understand their rights. It's something that we want to follow. Ronald, I appreciate you. Folks, this is why the work that we do is so important. I don't mean the work that I do. I mean the work that we do. I have often said, and I honestly believe this, that this show belongs to us. I like what one of my callers said, that I just have kind of, the city's biggest classroom. I am a teacher by heart, and I understand that in order for us to go forward, in order for us to fight this system, we need to be armed, not just with our muskets, people. We need to be armed with knowledge, and we need to be armed with the facts. We extrapolate our opinion from the facts. So the next time Donald Trump spews about getting rid of the 14th Amendment, or he, hints that maybe he's going to get rid of the 13th Amendment, or there's a fear he's coming after the First Amendment, you can rest easy because that's the executive branch. He cannot change the Constitution. But if the Supreme Court starts talking about doing some reinterpretation of the 14th Amendment, that's when we should all be concerned, because it is that branch of government that has the power to do that. It's the legislative branch that makes the laws. The executive branch enforces the laws, but it's the Supreme Court over that judicial branch. They have the power to interpret the laws. Know your rights, people. We're going to leave it here. This is Today with Dr. K. I'm Dr. K. Wise Whitehead. We're going to meet tomorrow at 3 p.m. Let's talk about Baltimore City. And then we need to try to find a way. I'm going to ask you to help me out. We need to have a lighter topic for the 4 o'clock hour. So, shoot me a quick email to davidwithdrk@gmail.com. Give me a lighter topic that we can handle at 4, because we need to end off very light for the end of the week. Stay tuned. Up next is For the Culture with Faraji. Remember, folks, your stories matter. Your opinion matters. We tell stories that matter. If it has your ear, it absolutely have my attention. Stand by for a quick update from MTA, and we'll talk tomorrow.
And a good evening. Get mobile, go faster, transfer free with a CharmPass mobile transit fare app, your new way to pay. For more information, mta.maryland.gov/CharmPass. On the light rail link, we're seeing about a 10 to 15 minute delay in both directions because of a disabled train. No problems on the Metro subway link. It's running on time, and MTA commuter buses are also showing on-time status. The Gold Line diverted eastbound to Fleet and Boston, one of the local link bus diversions because of construction. The Purple Line diverted at Frederick and Pulaski, and a broken water main repair causing the diversion of 79 eastbound to Tucker and Dickey Hill, 79 westbound diverted to Forest Park and Windsor Mill. For the MTA Transit Team, I'm Ken Berger on 88.9 FM WEAA, the voice of the community.
Want to know what's happening? What's going? Listen to me, Donna Powell, every Saturday at 4:30 p.m. on The Caribbean Affair with the musical Prime Minister Neil Matai. You'll hear about all the events happening in and around the Caribbean community. It's What's Happening, Saturdays at 4:30 p.m. with Donna Powell on 88.9 FM.
Support for WEAA is provided by
Towson University Department of Communication Studies presenting The Afrofuturistic Aesthetic and the Written Body, featuring multidisciplinary artist, writer, DJ, and performer Juliana Huxtable to discuss race, digital spaces, identity, and the body on November 5th at the Towson University Center for the Arts Recital Hall for mature audiences. More information available at events.towson.edu.
and members like you. Thank you.
Celebrating 40 years of broadcasting, Morgan State University Public Radio, 88.9 WEAA FM and HD1, Baltimore.
I do this for my culture. I do this for my culture. Peace and welcome to For the Culture right here on your source for cool jazz and more. WEAA 88.9 FM and WEAA.org. Absolutely the voice of the community. Folks, I'm your host Faraji Muhammad. Tonight, we're going to talk about what's been happening at the University of Maryland as their accreditation is under review in the wake of football player Mr. Jordan McNair's death. We'll talk about the ramifications of those decisions. Stay riding with us. It's For the Culture here on WEAA.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Jack Speer. President Trump is announcing plans to deny asylum to migrants seeking to enter the U.S. illegally. The action comes as a caravan of Central Americans continue to make their way through Mexico, headed to the U.S. southwest border. Trump said he'll sign an executive order next week, and he accused Democrats of being part of the problem.
These caravans and illegal migrants are drawn to our country by Democrat-backed laws and left-wing judicial rulings. We're getting rulings that are so ridiculous, so bad. They're writing the laws. Can't do that. Collectively known as an example, catch and release.
The administration has already said it will send up to 15,000 troops to the U.S. border. Trump, who's been focusing his attention on immigration ahead of next week's midterm elections, says migrants will have to, quote, present themselves lawfully at a port of entry. Airstrikes by U.S. and Afghan forces have increased over the past year, and that's led to about 40% more civilian casualties compared to last year. The report cites UN numbers. Here's NPR's Tom Bowman.
649 Afghan civilians were casualties from January through September. The American Military Command, meanwhile, cites far fewer civilian casualties from airstrikes. The command says 102 civilian casualties came from airstrikes, about 17% of the UN figure. And the command says the majority of civilian casualties from airstrikes are the result of bombing runs by the Afghan Air Force. American advisors are working to build up that force. Overall, the Inspector General says the Taliban and ISIS are responsible for most civilian casualties in Afghanistan, about 65%. And that's caused by the use of roadside bombs and suicide attacks. Tom Bowman, NPR News, Washington.
Today, the U.S. ambassador to the UN tried and failed to get the UN General Assembly to criticize Cuba's human rights record. Instead, as NPR's Michelle Kelman explains, the world body voted overwhelmingly, as it does each year, calling the U.S. to lift its embargo on Cuba.
Applause broke out when the annual non-binding resolution was approved 189-2. That was after U.S. Ambassador Nikki Haley's amendments to highlight Cuba's poor human rights record failed in lopsided votes.
I'm always taken aback when I hear applause in this chamber at moments like this, because there are no winners here today. There are only losers.
Haley says the UN lost by missing an opportunity to speak out on human rights, and the Cuban people have been left to the, quote, brutal whims of a dictatorship. European countries argue that the best way to promote positive change in Cuba is to lift the embargo. Michelle Kellerman, NPR News, the State Department.
On Wall Street, all three of the major U.S. stock market indices gained 1% or more as technology companies rebounded. The Dow was up 264 points. The NASDAQ rose 128 points. This is
heavy volume on the inner loop of 695 between 95 and Security Boulevard, and again between Park Heights Avenue and Perry Parkway. Outer loop stop and go between 95 and Green Spring Avenue, and again between 95 and Camp Mead Road. Westbound 70 is backed up between the Patapsco River Bridge to Columbia Pike. If you're traveling along southbound Harrisburg Expressway, you'll be inching between Patonia Road and 695. Northbound 95 stop and go between 216 and 100, and again between Washington Boulevard and the Fort McHenry Tunnel. Southbound, you'll be jammed off and on between 195 and 895. Southbound 97 is jammed between Benfield Boulevard and Generals Highway. Slow traffic northbound 795 after 695 to past Owings Mills Boulevard. And if you're traveling northbound 97, you'll be slow between Generals Highway and 32. This report is sponsored by AAA. For more traffic information, log on to sigalert.com. I'm Margot Burr with your Baltimore area traffic.
88.9 FM reminds you that the views expressed on WEAA programs are those of participants and not necessarily those of Morgan State University, the staff, management, or underwriters of Baltimore's home for cool jazz. WEAA 88.9 FM.
Tune in to WEAA tonight at 10 p.m. for a special broadcast of the Hip Hop Chronicles Respect My Vote Tiny Hall discussion held at the WEAA studios, and find out why you need to get out and vote. From Reverend Yearwood from the Hip Hop Caucus, Catalina Bird, Donnie Glover, Jill P. Carter, Lil Key, Aaron Maben, Derek Chase, and me, Mike Nice. That's tonight at 10 p.m. right here on WEAA 88.9 FM and WEAA.org.
88.9 FM reminds you that the views expressed on WEAA programs are those of participants and not necessarily those of Morgan State University, the staff, management, or underwriters of Baltimore's home for cool jazz. WEAA 88.9 FM.
I do this for my culture. I do this for my culture.
Peace and welcome back to For the Culture right here on your source for cool jazz and more. WEAA 88.9 FM and WEAA.org. Absolutely, the voice of the community. I'm your host, Faraji Muhammad. Thank you so much for checking in and riding with me. As we have been, we got a great conversation. Folks, I got to let you know at the top here, we're going to have a little bit of a different show tonight. We're going to be doing a special broadcast of the Respect My Vote town hall that occurred here. We're going to be playing that conversation to you at the 6 o'clock hour. So tonight it's going to be a short conversation, but it's still going to be a very worthwhile conversation as we talk about the big issues and the big stories. But again, that Respect My Vote town hall meeting that was hosted by my main man, DJ Mike Nice of Hip Hop Chronicles, and it featured the voices of Joe Picarda, Aaron Maben, Lil Key, and many others who were a part of the conversation to make sure that we have a greater understanding about why it's important to respect the vote of the next generation, especially those who are between the ages of 18 to 24 years old. That little sweet spot, that demographic of folks, those beloved millennials folks, that who seem to be on a different page when it comes to politics. And so tonight we're going to have that conversation, and you can hear that here on WEAA at the 6 o'clock hour. So what does that mean? That means that you're going to have to get your conversation, your thoughts in quickly, because once 6 o'clock comes through, folks, we don't want you to turn the station, because trust me, you do not want to miss this conversation about why it's important that young people are a part of the political process. But before then, we want to have this conversation because this news is coming out. There have been big developments in this story coming out of the University of Maryland, where the coach, the head coach of the football team, has been fired. DJ Durkin, he has certainly been fired. And that was a decision that was made from on Mount High at the University of Maryland, even though the Board of Regents of the institution was trying to put him on a suspension. But now that situation is going, and then another storm is rising, where the University of Maryland's accreditation is under review. Now, what does that actually mean? That means that they take a look at the larger scope of all that's happening of the school, right? They're looking at, what is going on in terms of the graduation rate, admission enrollment. They're looking at, all of the numbers as to whether this particular institution of higher learning is doing what it says it's going to do. Is it breaking any new grounds in any new particular area? The Middle States Commission on Higher Education is scheduled to discuss its stamp of approval, according to the reports from Baltimore Sun and other sources, on the university at a meeting later this month, to give this understanding. Basically, this is actually a regular thing that institutions of higher learning have to go through to ensure that they are going to have the authority to give these degrees to individuals, to graduates, and to make sure that those degrees are actually legitimate degrees. But the commission could be issuing a warning, according to the reports, in that it may place the University of Maryland on a probation or even terminate its accreditation. This is coming from the spokesperson for the commission, the Middle States Commission on Higher Education. He's saying that this could happen, or it could take no action at all. Basically, if the university lost its accreditation, its students would no longer be eligible for federal financial aid. Wow. Could you imagine that? Now, again, accreditation review is something that all institutions, all university colleges, they go through. But in light of what's been happening with the athletic program, i.e. the football team there is some great concern out of college in College Park about how that will potentially impact this accreditation review. And based upon what I've been sharing, and my colleague, Dr. K, and others have shared, that two different things, two different issues, right? Accreditation review is something that the university has to do to maintain its legitimacy and its validation. But this other issue of how the death of Jordan McNair was handled, now that's another thing. That's another thing. But if you go down this yellow brick road with me, folks, you will know that there have been institutions, many colleges and universities that have undergone great scrutiny because of its athletic program. But more importantly, that they've been able to recover somewhat, right? Now, that's according to us as spectators and as folks that aren't graduates of the college. One of the grave concerns that was reported today by the Baltimore Sun was that the University of Maryland has told the Board of Regents, the president has decided that, he was going to make the decision to fire DJ Durkin, but the university, that level of authority, has decided this could potentially be a fatal blow, as the university is trying to raise $1.5 billion. They're trying to raise that lottery money. They're trying to raise that lottery money, folks. And the fact is that all of this controversy, all of this that's been happening with the athletic department there has possibly put the larger community of the University of Maryland at risk financially. Now, here's where it gets to dollars and cents, folks. they may have put them at risk. So tonight, I just want to have a conversation just very quickly about, what are your thoughts on what's been happening right now at the University of Maryland? Because I foresee that this situation, it could happen anywhere. God forbid it happens here at Morgan State University or Coppin or any other HBCU around the country, around the state. And so looking at all of the pieces to this puzzle, the levels to this thing, right? You're talking about not just the fact of you have a student that has lost their life right there on campus, but then you're also looking at the financial strain. Now, here at Morgan, we have been able to embark on a fundraising drive, and we've been really blessed to raise the necessary funds to do some more big things here on campus, and to continue to do the great work of making Morgan State University a world-class university. But it would break my heart that the ignorance of some that are a part of the staff here at Morgan State or any other school, right, decided not to move forward on a certain thing or didn't make some decisions that were in the best interest of students that would cause this particular institution of higher learning to be at jeopardy, either on the accreditation side. And I'm not trying to say they're the same thing, but now that this information is out there, that all of these things are happening on the athletic program, it's going to be very hard to forget about those things. And how do universities recover from that, right? So what we're seeing from a University of Maryland, it makes me think about the HBCU community here. It makes me think about that. Now, I know that there are many different pathways into having this conversation, and I'm open to hearing all of them. But that's just one of the things. I read about this story and I said, we here at our HBCUs have to make the decisions that are in the best interest of the community, but most importantly, that's the best interest of the student body that's on these campuses. And so, my hope is that these decisions are being made each and every day. And that's the big thing. That's the big thing. And this is not a time, I don't think, that we look at it and say, making mockery of anything, because again, these things happen. We've experienced great tragic events here at Morgan State University that has caused some high level of concern for many people. If you're talking about, things happening on campus and whatnot, let's be real. If we're talking about having those conversations, but being able to recover from those conversations, how do you restore the trust into the alumni? How do you restore the trust of the community? More importantly, how do you restore the trust of the student body? So I just want to get your thoughts on this as we have this conversation about what's been happening out of University of Maryland, College Park. And if you have family or friends, or even if you were an alumni, you are an alumni of UMD, what's your take on what you're seeing right now, and what is the lesson that possibly that the HBCUs can learn from this? What is the lesson? What is the lesson at this point? That's the big question. What is the lesson that we should learn from this as we have this conversation about accreditation, about fundraising, and overall about making sure that we're making decisions that are in the best interest of the students? Look, we're going to take a quick pause. When we come back, we'd love to hear your thoughts. 410-319-8888, 410-319-8888. Stay riding with me. Whole lot coming up in the next 45 minutes of For the Culture right here on your source for cool jazz and more, WEAA 88.9 FM and WEAA.org. Absolutely the voice of the community. We'll be right back.
I do this for my culture. I do this for my culture.
Peace and welcome back to For the Culture right here on your source for cool jazz and more. WEAA 88.9 FM and WEAA.org. Absolutely the voice of the community. I'm your host, Faraji Muhammad. Thank you so much for checking in and riding with me this evening, folks. Tonight we're talking about the latest developments in the University of Maryland story. Such a tough time that UMD is having right now in College Park, man, from everything dealing with the death of Jordan McNair. And I certainly want to extend my condolences, our condolences to the family of Jordan McNair for the loss of such a brother who was trying to just make those decisions. And, certainly when you lose someone, especially in a manner like that, it's just a sad situation. So again, our hearts and condolences go out to the family of Jordan McNair, especially now, given that his death has caused all, the larger issues that have been happening at the university to come to the forefront and to be exposed. So, my hope and prayer is that to the family of Jordan McNair, that they understand that his death is certainly not in vain, but that maybe that his death will lead to others making better decisions, and most importantly, making sure that other players stay alive there at the University of Maryland. It's a hard thing to take in. But more importantly, not more importantly, but certainly also looking at where the school is. The accreditation review is scheduled to happen later on this month. And according to the Middle States Commission on Higher Education, the commission could issue a warning, place the university on probation, or terminate its accreditation. According to Mr. Brian Kirschner, a spokesman for the commission, he's saying that essentially, if the university lost its accreditation, its students would no longer be eligible for financial aid. But it's unclear, according to Mr. Kirschner, it's unclear whether the matter came before the commission because the body received complaints, or if it became aware of the upheaval through news reports or other means. The body asked university officials for more information about the tumultuous series of events to, quote, have a better understanding of what is going on so the commission can make an informed decision, according to Mr. Brian Kirschner. And so it's a lot of things happening there. But I can't help but to look at that situation and then to think about the state of HBCUs here in the state of Maryland, Morgan, Copp, and Bowie, and looking at where we are, because again, this situation with Jordan McNair could have happened anywhere else. However, how do we make sure that things like this don't happen? That's most important. But then, when we look at the state of HBCUs, and I know that is a very sensitive topic, and I know it's a big topic, but we're going to try our best to just kind of see, well, what else something that we can possibly learn from this? I mean, this is still going on, but what are some of the key lessons that we need to learn right now based upon the information that we have? So that's the big question that I have tonight. Join us in the conversation, 410-319-8888. And also you can check us out on my Facebook page at Faraji Muhammad and For the Culture, For the Culture 889. We also are live streaming on WEAA.org. All right, let's go into the conversation. We have two gentlemen that often talk about the issues of HBCUs and the challenges, but I want to bring them into this conversation. We got Gene from Pikesville. Gene, thank you so much for checking in. So what's your take on this?
Yeah, how you doing, Faraji?
I'm good.
Yeah. This is a very serious matter. As a trained educator, and anyone who's in education, you know that you have to be able to measure, your accomplishments.
Yeah.
And so, that's crucial. The phrase that I'm hearing a lot is toxic environment.
Yeah.
And I just hear, I hear everything else, but what rings in my head is toxic environment.
Yeah.
And so at the University of Maryland, we have a toxic environment. And so you have to measure that. So why do we have a toxic environment? Coach Butch McAdams uses this term. He says, and if you don't know who he is, he's a coach from the Washington area, but he says that in coaching, you are either hurt or, and the conjunction or is very important. You either hurt or you're injured. And in this toxic environment, what happened to Mr. McNair was the coaches deemed him to be hurt and not injured. Okay. Now, if I use another conjunction and I say hurt and injured, the culture and the environment and the culture and the mindset changes, because if you are hurt and you're injured, you could either be mildly injured or severely injured. That makes sense?
Yep.
Okay, so those conjunctions are paramount in understanding the relationship and what happened to Mr. McNair. And so that toxic culture has to be changed, and so does the conjunction. Because coaches have to look at, when, I don't care, you have a son, I have a son.
Yep.
And so my son played lacrosse or whatever. If my son twists his ankle, just like in the NBA now, if you grab the quarterback, you can't throw him down, right? If you go across the middle and you're a receiver, he's defenseless, correct? So that culture changed in the NBA, but I think the mindset is still, goes back to the old mindset in sports where, if, like Mr. McNair, when they thought he was hurt, and then they said, get back out there and walk it off.
Right.
And that's what he got caught up in. That conjunction again, or and end is paramount. I always call you Kamal. That's my son's name, Faraji.
Yes, sir.
And to me, it boils down. That's what it boils down to. And I'm not going to, labor the point. But that culture has to change, and it's paramount. And the way that we measure these things, whether it's the, what you were talking about in reference to the accreditation and all that kind of stuff.
Yes, sir.
That's what it's going to boil down to. So
absolutely, you know what? You're absolutely right, Gene. And I thank you for bringing up that point, and thank you certainly as always for checking in. And I do want to add to the HBCUs for the University of Maryland Eastern Shore is another one of our great HBCUs here in the state of Maryland. So thank you, Diane, for that reminder as well. But you're right. The culture has to change. The culture of leadership has to change. And so this thing just has so many different legs, folks, as we say here in the newsroom, because things are always happening. The word has gotten out just before the start of today's broadcast that the leader of the University System of Maryland's governing board said that he intends to resign. Mr. James T. Brady, who is the chair of the system's Board of Regents, informed the board of the development during a closed meeting in Baltimore today. And, folks are now trying to figure out what's next. The University of Maryland's, also University of Maryland President Wallace Lowe announced earlier this week that he would retire at the end of the school year. Mr. Lowe had told the board previously he believes DJ Durkin should leave as well. And so the issue, so you have the football coach, the football athletic program is dealing with that situation. Now you have the chairman of the University System of Maryland Board of Regents, Mr. Brady, is talking about resigning. And you got the president of the University of Maryland, Mr. Wallace D. Lowe, is talking about resigning. Wow. Leadership. And again, we're not having this conversation to make mockery, but we're having this conversation just to look at what are some of the key things that we need to look at to ensure that this level of sustainability continues for the HBCU community. How do we ensure that this situation and how it was handled can be looked at, and then most importantly, there's something that the HBCU community can learn from to ensure that things don't go the same road if this happened on an HBCU here in Maryland. Let's go back to the phone lines, 410-319-8888. Mr. Leo Barrows from Bolton Hill checking in. Thank you so much, Leo. What's your take on this?
Brother Farahi Muhammad, as always, I say stay on the battlefield.
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
Let me just say that the Board of Regents should be replaced. They should all resign. They tried to cover up this transgression of DJ Durkin. DJ Durkin is guilty of gross negligence, perhaps even criminal misconduct in the context in which there were no planned efforts with regard to first aid in terms of heat exhaustion, which is a prelude to heat stroke. And so if you don't have procedures in place and a policy in place to protect the safety and well-being of your players, that speaks to the fact that you think that your players are cannon fodder. You don't care anything about your players. Now, the chancellor of the university is Robert Carrott. I think he ought to resign as well. And keep in mind that when you're talking about HBCUs and the history of the University of Maryland, if you go back and analyze it, has a tremendously long history of institutional racism, going back to Juanita Jackson Mitchell, who was head of the NAACP and here in this city of Baltimore years ago, trying to get into the law school at the University of Maryland and being denied and having to fight and finally overcoming those obstacles and being allowed to be the first Black woman in the University of Maryland Law School. And then you've got the Maryland Higher Education Commission, which is controlled, in my opinion, by the University of Maryland. They're the people who've articulated and who've led the skullduggery regarding HBCUs. They're the people that Brian Frosch, the Democratic Attorney General, has paid attention to.
Yeah. And you know what, Leo, I got to let you go because we're up against the clock. But you've been heard loud and clear, sir. Loud and clear. And I'm glad that you brought up those points. Look, we got to take a quick pause. When we come back, we'll continue the conversation. I got C-Bar from East Baltimore that wants to talk about it. And Nichelle from Hartville checking in as well. Stay riding with us. Make sure you get your thoughts in 410-319-8888. We're talking about the latest developments out of the University of Maryland College Park. They got the accreditation review. There's some of the top leaders of the school are looking to resign, are planning to resign. What is the HBCU community? How can the HBCU community learn from this? And can the University of Maryland recover? Let's talk about it. 410-319-8888. Stay riding with us. It's For the Culture here on WEAA.
Did you miss your favorite WEAA public affairs show this week? Not to worry. You can listen to the podcast online at weaa.org by clicking the Public Affairs tab. You can also subscribe to our podcast on iTunes. Simply search the show name and press subscribe. Your podcast will automatically update on your iTunes library. We are keeping you informed on your source for cool jazz and more. WEAA 88.9 FM.
On Democracy Now!, we bring the world to you. I'm Amy Goodman, host of Democracy Now!, where we cover hard-hitting news stories that matter, such as ordinary people from around the world affected by U.S. foreign policy, grassroots leaders, activists, analysts, and so much more. Join me and Juan Gonzalez on Democracy Now! Right here on Public Radio WEAA 88.9 FM, the voice of the community.
Weekday mornings at 5 a.m. on WEAA 88.9 FM. Tune in to WEAA tonight at 10 p.m. for a special broadcast of the Hip Hop Chronicles Respect My Vote Tiny Hall discussion held at the WEAA studios, and find out why you need to get out and vote. From Reverend Yearwood from the Hip Hop Caucus, Catalina Bird, Donnie Glover, Jill P. Carter, Lil Key, Aaron Maven, Derek Chase, and me, Mike Nice. That's tonight at 10 p.m. right here on WEAA 88.9 FM and WEAA.org.
News headlines, events, podcasts, and more. WEAA.org.
Peace and welcome back to For the Culture, right here on your source for cool jazz and more. WEAA 88.9 FM and WEAA.org. Absolutely the voice of the community. I'm your host, Faraji Muhammad. Thank you so much for checking in and riding with me this evening, folks. We are talking about the latest developments coming out of the University of Maryland. Man, oh man, they are going through it right now, folks. They're dealing with the fact that their accreditation review is up. It's going to be determined this month by the Middle States Commission on Higher Education. That meeting is happening later this month. We just mentioned, based upon the reports from the Washington Post, that the top leader of the University of Maryland, the president, Mr. Wallace, Dr. Wallace Lowe, he's planning to retire at the end of the school year. President Wallace Lowe, he's planning to retire at the end of the school year. And then Mr. James T. Brady, who chairs the system's Board of Regents, he's planning to retire as well. And that announcement was just made today. So that's, some major shakeup in leadership at the University of Maryland. I'm going to have this conversation because I think it's important that in light of this major scandal of the death of Jordan McNair, that his death created a reevaluation of what was going on. Many people talk about this toxic culture. Gene checked in and talked about this, but that has been a very important part of this. And it has caused the conversation about the treatment of college athletes to get back to the forefront, right? I want to just put this thing in some context. There's a school called the Southern Methodist University, SMU. They undergone a football scandal that was an incident in which the football program there was investigated and punished for massive and repeated violation of NCAA rules and regulations over a period of several years, beginning in the 1970s and then continuing through the middle of the 1980s. The most serious violation was the maintenance of a slush fund, folks, that was used for quote unquote under the table payments to players and their families to entice them to come to SMU to play. And so as an indirect result of SMU's repeated violation, the NCAA instituted a rule change to stiffen penalties for multiple rule violations over a certain period that was referred to as the death penalty. Now, this happened. They made that decision. They pretty much shut down the football program at SMU. And then within a 1 year change, it took SMU 20 years to recover. Years to recover. Now, is this particular scandal something of that magnitude, right? Where the University of Maryland, it may take many years to recover. Some schools are able to bounce back. That's why I asked you, can the University of Maryland truly recover from this? Some schools have been able to bounce back. There are a number of colleges that have undergone serious scandals, from everything from sexual violations to players' death and whatnot, but they were able to kind of come back. And I've heard even sports commentators say, well, at the end of the day, if the school is winning, those things really don't stick for too long. But is that true, especially in this day and time? So there are a lot of levels to this that's on the table right now. So share with your thoughts about what you see coming out of the UMD in College Park, and possibly what are the lessons that are to be learned by the HBCU community here in Baltimore and around the state with Bowie, Morgan Coppin, and the University of Maryland Eastern Shore. Hit us up, 410-319-8888, 410-319-8888. Let's go to Michelle out of Hartville. Michelle, thank you so much for checking in. What's your take?
Hi, Faraji.
Hi.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to point out, one of the updates is that the University of Maryland College Park coach has been fired. I read that today,
right?
Recently,
Mm-hmm.
So he's been fired. So that is the update regarding that. But I also want to point out, and I'm kind of skeptic and believing that you don't know about it, but you, maybe because you're at Morgan, you might not have the room to put it out there and maybe waiting for a caller to put it out there. But I just saw an interview for 2 days about a student from Morgan State. I don't remember his last name, but his first name is Marquise. 4 years prior, he died from heat stroke. And it forced his mother sued Morgan State. And it forced Morgan State to put some things in place. And Morgan State is the only university throughout Maryland who has who have 10 ice baths, because ice baths is what causes students, football players who are experiencing exhaustion from, the heat to immediately depreciate their temperature. So Morgan now has 10 ice baths. And when they are having practices in the summertime, their players are forced to go into these ice baths. So I just wanted to point out that, university, so I'm gonna say this from this lens. I am an HBCU graduate, and undergrad and grad. My grad degree came from MSU, undergrad from University of Maryland Eastern Shore. So I want to put out there that University of Maryland College Park does not, whatever's going on with them does not give us insight as to how we are to move forward. They don't set the stage, because Morgan has already set the stage.
Absolutely.
So I just want to point that out.
You know what, Nichelle, and I'm glad you brought it up. I think and we're gonna get some more details about that situation that you just spoke about. But I think that to the latter part of your point, that there has to be, I think it's important for us to kind of look at this thing in a broader sense, right? Because you're right. The University of Maryland doesn't set the stage for HBCUs. However, because it is a neighboring college, institute of higher learning, I think that at some point we all have to, at least from an institutional standpoint, see what works and what doesn't work, right? And the biggest thing that I've heard so far that's in regards to the situation in College Park is the level of cover-up, the level of the fact that there aren't, like Leo said, the policies and procedures aren't there. So when you have all of those things that are in place or not in place, hopefully it kind of rings a bell for the other neighboring colleges to really look into that. I mean, at least having some different conversations, right? Because a lot of these programs, and I'm not just talking about in the state of Maryland, I'm talking about across the country. A lot of these programs, they are well-funded programs because of the players. And we could talk about that. That's a whole different conversation. But at the end of the day, even though that may be the case, they're still people. And we need to keep those things in mind. So, Nichelle, I appreciate you for checking. We're going, like I said, we're going to look into that. But let's go to C-Bar in East Baltimore. C-Bar, what's your take on this? You mentioned something about the toxic culture and toxic masculinity. What's your thoughts on that?
What's up, Faraji?
What's up, bro?
It's a great topic. It actually, it just it's one of those topics that it really is a larger conversation, which has to do with football in general. I think in football, this is coming from a former college football player. I played at Salisbury University.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, you have to suppress certain, things that go on in your body and things like that, because, in terms of being masculine and being an alpha male, you don't want to show any weakness. So, and listening and reading about the story of Jordan McNair and the culture that existed under Coach Durkin, it was basically you couldn't give up,
So you had to, regardless of whatever is going on within you, you can't show it on the outside of you.
Right, exactly, and that is the reason why, unfortunately, it sounds like he lost his life, because he didn't, listen to his body. And I was unaware that there weren't any policies in place to address, like heat exhaustion and things like that. It doesn't really make sense to me that would be the case, because the training staff is right there on the field, during practice. So
right.
If they can see a player is exhausted and complaining about exhaustion, you know, as the head trainer, you know, you should step up and say, sit down, get on the side, get water. You know, that's your job as a training staff to, you know, somewhat step in. But, you know, it sounds like the culture at Maryland under DJ Coach Durkin, it was one that, you know, that wasn't allowed.
Hey, Seaball, you know, it really sounded like one of them good old boy networks.
Right. I mean,
you know what I'm saying? Like
really,
you covering up the situation with the coach, but then there's also word that came out earlier today, and Yahoo Sports and others are reporting that the Maryland board recommended keeping the trainers who failed to adequately treat Jordan McNair.
Right.
So now see when you have that level of cover up, how it permeates through the whole leadership team. Now it's from the head coach to probably to the coordinators, all the way down to the doctors.
Right. And it's like you said, it's across the board. You know, they were all on the same page in regard to the culture of the team. You know, I'm not to say anything when I see a player that may need help. It's up to him for him to really, you know, I guess, say, okay, I can't do it. But then he has to suffer the consequence of, well, you know, you're weak.
And see, so then that is, like you said, toxic masculinity at its
masculinity, which exists throughout football. You know what I mean?
Absolutely, like, I can dig. I'm sure it does.
It's like that brings up that larger conversation when you start talking about like the Good Old Boys Network. You know that you know it's like I keep seeing the parallels between what's happening in the NFL. You know what I mean? Down the line. You know, in the NFL, it's and this one of the reasons, you know, I love the Ravens, but I haven't been watching. But it's like, you know, after Kaepernick made his stance and to see the NFL treated the way they have, you know, I mean, like it shows how they feel about the players.
Well, can we go a little bit deeper, Seaball? Yeah. I want to throw this really quickly out there. Let's go. That also speaks volumes about the culture coming up in the you know, like the Pee Wee leagues. You know what I mean? Like if you are teaching little boys that they should not stop when their body is at a certain point, they should not rest, right? And you driving that into them when they're little boys, the messages that you give little boys and little athletes, that's going to resonate with them. That's going to stay with them, right?
Indeed.
Because, you know, coach said that, you know, stay out there on the team. That's what makes you a warrior. That's what makes you a soldier. That's what makes, you know what I'm saying? So then the messages get really blurry between taking care of your body and then at the same time listening to what coach is saying, because you truly trust the advice of your coach, of your coordinator, of your trainer.
Yep. And I mean, this is the world that we live in just as human beings out here. The amount of just muddy water and every really every issue. It's like, okay, coach says I should, you know, keep going. And, you know what I mean? Like,
that's it. And that's an ongoing mentality that even an NFL player may still have, because that was driven into him when he was a little boy.
Right.
There it is. C-Bar, thank you so much. I'm glad you brought up that point, toxic masculinity. Let's go to Clay in Glen Burnie. Clay, what's your take on this University of Maryland situation? Is there anything that HBCU community can learn from this? Clay, okay. Clay, give us a call back. Let's go to Robert. Robert, thank you so much for checking in. What's your take? We got Robert? It looks like.
How you doing?
I'm good. I'm good, Robert. How are you?
All right, good, man. You get the take on that whole situation is just all. It's their culture. That's their culture. Been going on for years, man. You mentioned SMU, right?
Yes, sir.
Well, one of the greatest running backs of all time came out of there, Eric Dickinson. Okay? And we talked about how, you know, they took his people, man, before, you know, he got in there and took care of everything, you know. But the real thing behind that, they don't want to get them brothers no money. That's the whole issue.
and they know all about equipment and all this stuff. Pay them guys. You got a coach making $12 million,
Yeah.
$8-9 million on the college level. Come on.
Yep.
And these brothers, you had a guy last year before last, basketball guy, and he said, man, they stop after the season is over. How does that equate? You know, you can call up what you want to do, D-League, B-League, anything you want to.
Yeah.
More guys need to get paid. And I'm going to tell you something, Brother Muhammad.
Yeah.
You turn that TV on Saturday, I ain't never seen an empty college state.
Nope.
You got me? we got to make some sense with this stuff.
Hey, look, Robert. And that's why I said, Robert, this thing has levels to it, right? Because now that conversation is going to come back to the forefront, right? You know, the treatment of athletes, of college athletes, right? Particularly black athletes, right?
Yes.
The treatment of black college athletes. We're going to talk about, that brings to the forefront the amount of money that a university may earn as a result of their athletic program, right? And the impact that may have with the university. I mean, those things are big things. Those things are big things. Yes, sir.
Let me put this to you.
Go ahead.
Michelle Obama said something a couple years ago.
Okay.
The white males fall up. What do you think they was getting ready to do with Georgia? He was going to fall up. He wasn't going to fall down. The whole staff.
Yeah.
They're concerned about what he has. They got their fraternity, man. They sympathize with each other. You read it. That's why the outcry was so great. They give these guys another chance to kill some damn body.
Wow. Robert, I got you loud and clear, man. Hey, Robert, I got to let you go, but I truly appreciate you for checking in. Let's go to Troy out of Baltimore County. Troy, what's your take on this situation? Is there any lessons that HBCUs can learn from this?
I truly appreciate you for checking in.
Hey, Troy, turn down your radio for me, bro.
Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, how you doing, my man?
I'm good, Troy. How are you?
I'm doing great. Listen, I think Jordan McNair can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
I think Jordan McNair being 19, he kind of should have understood that he couldn't go no more into himself. He should have said, Coach, I can't do this. I'm going to take a break. I'm going to rest. Based on how collegiate athletes is and based on the world in which we live in, I think he should have knew enough to say, okay, I can't run up this hill. I can't go up these steps. So I'm going to stop no matter how mad you get. Prime example of the guy, Tavon Austin, he already have said that he's going to play a certain amount of years because he knows the injuries that his body might take a toll on. So he's already looking out for injuries and preparing himself. So if something comes down that he thinks going to damage him, he's going to quit. And I just think Jordan McNair probably should have just took it upon himself to say, okay, I don't want to do this. Because all colleges like that, not just Maryland, Alabama, all colleges with their athletes.
But here's the thing. You know what? And I hear you loud and clear. I hear you, right, Troy? But check this out. Here's the thing. If you are a part of, it's like going into any workplace. If you go to your workplace and there is a culture, ESPN reported, and many other sources have reported that the inside story of the Maryland football program, there was a toxic culture of both fear and intimidation. Now, you got to remember, now Jordan McNair was 19 years old, right? He played for a major university for his hometown, for his home state. And so he's going to, I mean, he might be thinking, oh, man, I need to sit this one out. But at the end of the day, he's going to try to appease or try to please his coach because he wants to show that he's a team player, that he can take it. Just like my man C-Bar checked in and said that oh no, I'm tired. My body is at this point, but at the same time, I can go on. If your coach is telling you, you can keep going, you can keep going, you can keep going, you can keep going. Look, man, if you want to be great, you take little rest, put more work in. We'll take a break at the end of training today.
He should have worried about pleasing himself, not his coach, man. I hear what you're saying. I understand, but right now, the world in which we live in, athletics, they need to know better. I'm more important than the team. Thanks anyway, man.
Hey, thank you so much for checking in. Okay, that's a valid point, Troy. Okay, let's go to Clay, Glen Burnie. Clay, what's your take on this?
Thank you, Mr. Muhammad, for taking my call. An on-point topic as usual.
Oh, thank you so much, Clay.
Unfortunately, this young man lost his life. However, with the deep pockets that Maryland has, I'm sure they will bounce back. And getting to in reference to toxic environments, if Penn State can bounce back after the
Hey,
I'm quite sure Maryland's going to end up being okay. And what can HBCUs learn from this? Just look and learn from their mistakes. Because if it falls on one of these top schools, onefold, it'll fall on us tenfold. You know what I mean? As far as punishments and things of that nature. So Maryland will be all right. And thank you for the call.
Hey, thank you so much, Clay. Check this out, folks. Now, I mentioned it in the first half hour, but the University of Maryland right now is really concerned because they have embarked upon a $1.5 billion fundraising campaign. In May, it was reported that it was halfway complete. But they still got a ways to go, obviously, right? And this is a campaign which envelops much of the large donations made to the university. And they have received money from $21 million from Barry and Mary Gossett that was focused on student athletes. Last semester, they got $219.5 million from the A. James and Alice B. Clark Foundation, focused on scholarships and engineering programs. And then in 2014's $31 million gift from the Brendan IRIP, focused on computer science. $1.5 billion. That's what they're on that campaign for right now. But they're concerned. They are really, really concerned that this latest controversy is going to disrupt the momentum of raising that $1.5 billion. That's a real concern. That's a very real concern. But it also shows you how much money it takes to operate a university. That lottery ticket winner, yeah. That lottery ticket winner, they could have just gave their winnings to one university. But that's a major concern. Let's go to Brother Mark checking in. Brother Mark, thank you so much, sir. What's your take on this situation? University of Maryland. Is there anything that the HBCU community here in Maryland can learn from this?
Hey, Faraji, how you doing, bro?
I'm good, brother.
To you. I'll be real quick. Let me first say, man, that, a lot of people out there may not know that I am a graduate of University of Maryland. I was there during the bias years.
Oh, wonderful.
And
okay.
So this hits home to a lot of alumni, especially African-American alumni who lived through that era.
Yeah.
And then seeing this again. And so my condolences definitely go out to the McNabb family as well. And then basically to answer your question, brother, what I want to see HBCUs learn from this is to make sure that your student athletes graduate. That is the key thing. I'll make sure our brothers and sisters get their degrees, because there's so many of our athletes out there that are left high and dry, giving their all to these universities, and they're not even guaranteed. Some of these scholarships are not year to year and so forth. I want our HBCUs that when they make that commitment for these young athletes to come in there, let's make sure that they get their degrees so they have something to fall back on after they've given all their all to these universities.
Absolutely. Brother Mark, I couldn't have said it better. Thank you for dropping that final thought with us tonight, folks. Brother Mark, we really appreciate that. You're absolutely right. And just to know, the University of Maryland is suffering right now because they have an 8-point drop in admission of Black college students. They need Black folks, Black college students to come through. They need it. So they're dealing with some real challenges over there, like many other institutions. And so when we have this conversation about HBCUs, we got to really press the point that without these HBCUs and without providing a space for Black students to learn about themselves and to learn about the world around them, then guess what? Those things could diminish as well. So we're going to keep our eyes open about what's been happening out at the University of Maryland College Park. But I want to thank each and every one of you for being a part of the conversation tonight. Look, in a few moments, we're going to be switching gears. You're going to hear a special conversation about Respect My Vote town hall that took place earlier this week here at WEAA. We want to play that conversation for you because we're getting you ready for the midterm election coming up this Tuesday. So stay riding with us. That conversation that is hosted by Mike Nice of Hip Hop Chronicles is coming up next. I want to thank all of you for being a part of the conversation. I want to thank my dynamic producer, Alex Blanc, my productions assistant, Daryl and Jalen, and certainly Charlie for making me sound so good. And of course, Mallory Pinkert-Pierre. Up next is hip hop, is the Respect My Vote town hall. Stay riding with us as always, folks.
Tune in to WEAA tonight at 10 p.m. for a special broadcast of the Hip Hop Chronicles Respect My Vote Tiny Hall discussion held at the WEAA studios, and find out why you need to get out and vote. From Reverend Yearwood from the Hip Hop Caucus, Catalina Bird, Donnie Glover, Jill P. Carter, Lil Key, Aaron Maven, Derek Chase, and me, Mike Nice. That's tonight at 10 p.m. right here on WEAA 88.9 FM and WEAA.org.
Celebrating 40 years of broadcasting, Morgan State University Public Radio, 88.9 WEAA FM and HD1, Baltimore.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Jack Spear. President Trump delivered a White House broadside against illegal immigration today. NPR's Scott Horsley reports the president's message underscores what's become his closing argument in the final days of the midterm election campaign.
Trump promised to crack down on what he calls the abuse of the asylum process, and he delivered a stern warning to a group of Central American migrants slowly making their way through Mexico in the direction of the U.S. border.
Let me begin by stating that these illegal caravans will not be allowed into the United States, and they should turn back now because they're wasting their time.
Trump says he's finalizing a plan that would funnel asylum seekers to official ports of entry, and he suggested those families could be detained indefinitely while their claims are processed. Immigrant advocates say both those policies would violate U.S. law. Scott Horsley, NPR News, the White House.
With days to go until Election Day, a new poll finds Republicans continue to trail Democrats in congressional races. More from NPR's Danielle Kurtzleben.
The poll from NPR, PBS NewsHour, and Marist finds that Democrats lead Republicans by 9 points when pollsters ask likely voters which party's House candidates they plan to vote for. Within demographic groups, there are some much bigger partisan gaps. Independents prefer Democrats by 14 points, for example. Women prefer Democrats by 15 points as well, while men are about evenly split. Overall, non-white voters prefer Democrats by 43 points, while white voters prefer Republicans by 8 points. Some groups, such as whites without a college degree, favor Republicans more heavily. Danielle Kurtzleben, NPR News.
The Justice Department is accusing a number of companies in both China and Taiwan, as well as 3 individuals, with trying to obtain trade secrets from a U.S. semiconductor company. Attorney General Jeff Sessions says the alleged target of the attack was an Idaho-based company, Micron, that produces and stores memory and electronics.
It controls about 20 to 25% of the dynamic random access memory industry, a technology not possessed by the Chinese until very recently.
Prosecution comes amid a mounting trade and tariff battle between China and the U.S. The Trump administration today imposed restrictions on technology exports to one of the indicted companies. Workers kept up their productivity in the third quarter, though the rise was slightly slower than the pace of the previous 3 months. Labor Department reports productivity by U.S. workers for the 3 months ending in September rose at 2.2% annual rate. That follows a 3% rise in the second quarter of the year. Productivity is a measure of output per hour worked and is closely watched by economists since it allows companies to raise worker wages without significantly increasing the cost of goods and services. Stocks continue their rebound from broad weakness last month. Dow was up 264 points today. The NASDAQ closed up 128 points. This is NPR.
Heavy volume on the inner loop of 695 between 95 and Security Boulevard, and again between Park Heights Avenue and Perry Parkway. Outer loop stop and go between 95 and Greenspring Avenue, and again between 95 and Camp Mead Road. Westbound 70 is backed up between the Patapsco River Bridge to Columbia Pike. If you're traveling along southbound Harrisburg Expressway, you'll be inching between Patonia Road and 695. Northbound 95 stop and go between 216 and 100, and again between Washington Boulevard and the Fort McHenry Tunnel. Southbound, you'll be jammed off and on between 195 and 895. Southbound 97 is jammed between Benfield Boulevard and General's Highway. Slow traffic northbound 795 after 695 to past Owings Mills Boulevard. And if you're traveling northbound 97, you'll be slow between General's Highway and 32. This report is sponsored by AAA. For more traffic information, log on to sigalert.com. I'm Margot Burr with your Baltimore area traffic.
88.9 FM reminds you that the views expressed on WEAA programs are those of participants and not necessarily those of Morgan State University, the staff, management, or underwriters of Baltimore's home for cool jazz. WEAA 88.9 FM.
Welcome in, everybody. LG, that's me. We are all the way live on this Thursday night. It is Morgan Sports Live. Coming at you from Towson. We are at Glory Days in Towson on Joppa Road. Morgan State University Sports is the mission. Be talking a little bit Morgan State University football, and later in the hour, going to talk a little Morgan State University softball. My name is LG, joined here at Glory Days by my partner in crime. His name is Renard Stubbs. Stubbs had a difficult trip last weekend down to Tallahassee, Florida. The Bears took on the Rattlers of Florida A&M. Didn't have the happy ending we had hoped when the Bears took on the Rattlers on Saturday. A Morgan State University team looking for that consistency element and didn't find it when we were on the road in Tally on Saturday afternoon.
Well, I tell you what, Lamont, I don't know if you believe in bad omens. It all started in the parking lot when our bus to go to the hotel broke down. Tough road trip for the Bears. I like to say this is where coaches earn their keep. When you got to get your team up, you don't have a whole lot of things to play for. This is where coaches earn the big bucks, LG.
Well, right now, this is a Morgan State football team that still has some football left. And so that's reason enough to get up and make it happen. And first thing up will be this Saturday. The Bears will be on the home front, taking on the Bethune-Cookman University Wildcats. And home has not been home sweet home for Morgan State so far this season. Still looking, Renard, for that first win on the home front.
I tell you, though, we got so used to this team playing really competitive games, playing down to the end. We won a couple of them on the road. Unfortunately, we have not been able to win a home game so far this season. So that's one thing to look forward for on Saturday. We still haven't won a home game. We want to show the home crowd what the real Bears are all about.
Now let's get a jump started. Indeed, this Saturday, the Bears will be on the home front. The opposition will be conference rival, the Bethune-Cookman University Wildcats, coming all the way from Daytona to Baltimore. That game's going to kick off at 4 o'clock on Saturday afternoon. Of course, we'll have it for you right here on Morgan State University Radio. Our coverage of the contest begins with the Morgan Game Day Experience. We kick that off at 3. And again, game time between the Bears and the Wildcats will be on Saturday at 4 o'clock. We are joined here at Glory Days by the head man in charge of Morgan State University football. In his first year as such, Ernest Jones is up in the building. Coach Jones, welcome aboard. We appreciate you joining us on this Thursday night.
Oh, Lamont, I'm glad to be here. Another exciting day and exciting time as we get ready to go face Bethune-Cookman.
That's indeed the next order of business, Coach, the Bethune-Cookman University Wildcats. But first, a visit to Tallahassee last weekend. the Bears unable to do what they have been doing pretty well, beating teams on the road in conference. Could not deliver that W against the Rattlers in Tallahassee. Congratulations to Florida A&M for what they did. But your assessment of what Morgan did, the orange and blue, on Saturday in Tallahassee.
I mean, first of all, Coach Simmons brought a great football team in there. We knew they were going to be well coached, a disciplined team. We showed some undisciplined with ourselves with all those penalties. I mean, we had over 14, 15 penalties as a football team. You just can't beat good football teams when you penalize yourself. And then we had turnovers out there. We put the football on the ground, turning the football over. Are we trying to go out there and compete in the football game? You just can't do those things. This is a good football team that we have, but we're not good enough to make those type of mistakes in regards to penalties and turnovers. And we gave up a bunch of big plays out there, on offense, defense, and special teams.
It's uncharacteristic of an Ernest Jones team. You've been coaching teams that have battled and fought, and in that game against Florida A&M, they essentially had their thing go their way from beginning to end. Talk to me about how practice has gone throughout the course of the week, because the key is how this team responds to the adversity suffered in Tallahassee.
Yeah, Lamont, I thought we had a great week of practice. The kids came out there, inspired a bunch of energy. If you came and watched our team practice, you would know that this was a two-win football team. I mean, a lot of energy, a lot of competition, a lot of competitiveness. I mean, these guys believe in themselves. They know they're a good football team. One of the things we talked about this week in more detail is execution. And the kids began to repeat the word execution, execution, execution. We're just talking about using the fundamental skills and the fundamental techniques that the coaches are teaching them. And I think that they know that if they can go out there and use those fundamental skills, fundamental techniques, and execute, they'll be able to play with anybody. In particular, they can play with Bethune-Cookman.
Coach, back in the old days when I played ball in high school, we used to wear Pride. We had T-shirts. We used Walbrook Pride. How much does pride kick in at this part of the season? And also, you have some coaches that will say, if we didn't have a good game, I'm going to throw this game tape away and just move forward. Or are you the type of coach? What type of approach would you take? Are you going to keep dissecting that film? You're going to just forget about what happened on Saturday?
Absolutely. When you talk about a young team, a young program, we're trying to change the culture here. We're trying to teach these kids how to win, how to be successful on the football field and in life. So we want to watch that film. We want to watch that tape. We want to see what type of mistakes we made so that we don't make those mistakes again. But we believe in our players. We believe in our coaches. And we just want to continue to talk about who we are. A big thing for us turning this thing around is that we got to have an identity. And on offense, on defense, and on special teams, we got to be true to that identity. We got to believe in that identity. And we got to just continue to pushing and fighting. And one of the things that I've been saying all year, I'll keep saying, is that we have a football team that'll compete. And we have a football team that'll compete for 4 quarters. Yep, we went down there at FAMU, and it looked like we weren't competing all the way for 4 quarters, but you have to go look into those young men's eyes coming to the locker room with them. They were competing. They were trying to win a football game, but Florida A&M was a good football team.
And then I will also add that FAMU only scored 7 points in the second half, so you made some adjustments and made some things happen in the second half.
Unfortunately, the Bears didn't get it done, but the next opportunity, just 48 hours away, Coach. Got the Wildcats coming up to town, a program that we've had some difficulty with over the past few years, whether we played them down on the beach or up here in Baltimore. How do you assess that Bethune-Cookman Wildcat team, and how do you size up our matchup against the Wildcats on Saturday?
I mean, you're talking about an explosive, athletic, fast football team. When you go on offense, they got a quarterback that can run and throw the football. He can make all the throws. They have a running back that can get through the hole. He don't need much room. And when he gets through the hole, it's not just about a big play. This guy can go to the end zone and score a touchdown. And they have wide receivers that can catch the football, run fast, score touchdowns all over the place. Just a bunch of athletes on that offensive side of the football. And then on defense, they're not as big as you might think. They're athletic. I got a lot of respect for their secondary. They got 4 guys over there that can cover, that can go snatch the ball out of the air. They play man-to-man just as well as we play man-to-man, and we think we're pretty good at it. And then their front, they're athletic guys who can get off of blocks. They can get their hands on you. They can shed blocks, get to the quarterback, and free up lanes for those linebackers to run. So it'll be a fast, athletic team, and we'll have to be on our P's and Q's to be able to compete and beat this team.
It's a Bethune squad coming off a loss. They were on the road last weekend in Lincoln, Nebraska, taking on the Cornhuskers, and fell to Nebraska by that 45-9 count. They're 4-5 overall, are the Wildcats of Bethune-Cookman, even up at 2-2 in conference play as they come to Hughes Stadium on Saturday. A place we haven't won yet, Coach, at home. Talk to me about getting that monkey off your back. Winning on campus. How important is that to get that W for that reason on Saturday?
It's very important. I mean, we got 2 games left to play in front of this crowd. The crowd, everything has been in place. The crowd has come to every single football game. The fans have been coming. The administration has been supportive. But we got to go in our home stadium and win a football game. And that was the challenge to the team this week. They understand that. We got to go in that locker room and come out of that locker room and play with a sense of urgency and pride, as you were saying, that we have to win a football game on our home field. And we feel pretty good about it as we approach Bethune-Cookman.
And if we're going to get it done, Coach, as you know, you got to get it done in all 3 phases: offense, defense, and, of course, special teams. And speaking of special teams, you brought some company with you, Coach, to the restaurant tonight. Special teams coordinator is in the house. Assistant head coach for the Morgan State University Bears. There he is right there. Ron Dickerson Jr. is in the building. Coach Dickerson, we appreciate you taking some time to join us tonight.
Thank you very much. I'm very glad to be here.
Let's talk a little special teams. Let's talk special teams in general, but more specifically, the development of Morgan special teams. Obviously, an important phase of any football team and of any football game. Talk to me about the general special teams philosophy at Morgan State University.
When we talk about special teams, it's actually right there with the offense, the defense. I mean, every coach from Coach Jones on down has a position on special teams. So when you come out and watch us practice, you have every coach doing something hands-on every time we do special teams. And we put a lot of effort into special teams. And so, it's a big thing when we have our meetings. There's a lot of pride in special teams. And in that behalf, it has shown that. I mean, in a lot of our categories, we're right there in the top 3 in the conference. And that goes to the young men buying in what we're doing, and we know how big special teams are. We have a lot of young guys that are playing on special teams, which there's a lot of energy in that, and that's something that we challenge every day, is that special teams is just as important as offense and defense.
Coach, did you do anything special, like over the off season? We discussed it earlier in the year. Alex Weaa had struggled the first couple of seasons. Then this year, he's really kicked the ball well. He had one tough game. He's been kicking the ball into the end zone. Did you do anything special, any type of psychological coaching or anything to get Alex ready for this 2018 season?
The NCAA allows you to have some quality time in the offseason, and that's what we did. I went out there personally. Coach Jones came out there, and I spent quality time with Weaa. And then, we kind of took it from kicking field goals to something that he loves, is playing golf. So a lot of times you'll hear me say, follow through with the golf swing. We don't need to shank one, into that capacity. Yeah. And you could see the difference. And it went from the one-on-one time that we were able to have in the classroom, again, by the NCAA, through the one-on-one time that we had on the field. And then the unique thing was Weaa started to compete in our early morning workouts. Weaa was one of the top guys in the front of the lines competing. So I think it was a pride thing and an ownership thing that Weaa took on. And, one of the things that I do and I try to take pride is I get to know my young men that I coach. And so I spend a lot of quality time. And I think that also helped in convincing Weaa that he is a good player.
Coach, I want to talk about another aspect of special teams, and that is that return game. And my question is, how much of it is coachable? How much of it is instinct? Because when you're returning kicks, that's really something you can't necessarily practice at full speed all the time, because you want to have healthy players when the season starts. So when you're evaluating somebody's ability to be effective as a returner, punt or kick return, how much of that is instinctive and how much of that is something that you and your colleagues can coach up?
Well, the blessing is that I actually did it in college, and I did it at the next level at the Kansas City Chiefs. And so a lot of that I've been able to, work with the young men and talk to. And then that's actually where Coach Jones helps on the special teams. He works back there with the returners. But we do a lot of live stuff early in camp, because you cannot simulate, but just by running down there and having guys, they have to actually know what it's going to be like on Saturday. And so early in camp, it was live. We were having guys run down there and make tackles. And, we have a young guy back there, Jordan Cofield, who's going to be a great one when he continues to get in the weight room and get stronger. But a lot of it is instinct. You have to, and let me go back. A lot of it's confidence in the 11 guys on there. The 10 guys in front of Jordan have to believe in Jordan. And Jordan has to believe, or the returner has to believe in those 10 guys in front of him. And I think that, that's where we are right now. We've had some big returns, haven't had that big one yet. But, you can see that the glue is starting to pack together in that. And we do a lot of drills out there. Coaches on them. I mean, every day they're catching. Every day they have guys running by them. Every day we're trying to do it as fast as we can to simulate what's going to happen on Saturday. And then you hope that the adrenaline comes in and everybody has confidence in each other and something positive comes out of that.
And Coach, if you could, can you comment on probably, I guess it would be the most unsung component of not only special teams, maybe the unsung component of the whole team, maybe the most unsung person on campus, and that is the long snapper. It's somebody, an individual who really doesn't get a lot of attention unless they screw up. And then everybody knows who they are. Went out and recruited a young man who unfortunately suffered an injury in the first game against Towson. Talk about how he's coming along, and secondly, that position in general, the long snapper.
So we get excited. We lose a senior last year. We go out and get a very highly recruited young man. His first snap, he snaps the ball, and ironically, yes, he gets hurt. But let's talk about the positive. He also scored a touchdown on that play.
Yes, he did.
So, he'll have a good and a bad memory in that situation. As soon as that happened, I looked at Coach and I said, I got to have tryouts. So if you would have seen it, we almost had every guy on the team out there trying to long snap. I mean, from the kickers to the coaches, that everybody was out there. And we had to break it up. Instead of having one guy, we ended up having a short snapper for our field goals. And we were going through trying to figure it out and found out that one of actually the starting receivers, Corey Holmes, a graduate transfer, comes in, and he can actually do it and does it really well to where actually NFL scouts have come in and said, wow, he's very impressive. And so, we work at it all the time. So you're talking about Corey's playing a series or two, catching balls, taking hits, and then he's got to go right over there on fourth down and snap it back, run down the field and make a tackle. And he's done that. And again, I think it goes back to, if you listen to what Coach Jones says about we try to do the little things, about the characteristics, about how we're trying to build a young team, and these young guys are really buying into what's going in, and through life you have adversity. But when you can have a young man as Corey Holmes has done, and a lot of other guys on special teams, our motto on special team is one play, one team, one heartbeat. And if I can get those guys to do that, if Coach Jones is, we as the Morgan State Bears can get them guys just to play one play as hard as they can, success is going to happen. And we've been able to overcome, that injury and been very successful. Tyreek Johnson is our short snapper. He's an offensive lineman we brought in from junior college, and he's doing a great job with the field goal, and stuff like that. So you're right. It's a very unsung. We've, again, as I like to say, being from the South, threw some gumbo powder and everything in there, mixed some stuff up, and done a really good job of having guys buy in and doing it.
And it's working. Before we kick you out of the restaurant, Coach, we can't let you go without telling folks about the history. You have it in your pedigree. It's in your DNA. And there may be some who may be unaware of your father, Ron Dickerson Sr., who, of course, played for the Dolphins. He was on that 1972 undefeated team, that historic team. And also, he was a history maker in terms of being the first African-American head coach at Temple Division 1A institution. Talk about your dad, his influence on you, and that history that runs through your veins.
I guess, was lucky. But, I was blessed. When I was growing up, my dad was at Penn State. I went to State College, so I was also around Coach Paterno and that legendary team when they won the national championship. So I learned a lot about discipline. I learned a lot about the fundamentals. And unfortunately, like in this profession, my dad was really never around. So we haven't had the opportunity to spend a lot of time until I got older, because I went on and played college ball, and then went on and was blessed to play in the NFL, and then had my own family, in that situation. But the things that I do like is when we go home for Thanksgiving, we catch up on, Dad, what did you see the receivers do? What did you see the special teams? Or Dad, how do I need to get off of this pressure with the way the defense is playing? And it was really good. We have a lot of good conversations in that. There's a lot of knowledge in the family. There's a lot of history. And I appreciate, my dad was lucky. He had been in the hospital and was able to come to this last game, and I got to spend a little bit of time with him and all that other stuff. So it's just a blessing to, go through the process of having a legendary father like that and trying to, not so much walk in his footsteps, but understand that really he paved the way for me and every other coach that's out there, and so I just want to keep the name, especially being that I am junior, going in the right direction. So it's a blessing and an honor to have him, in that situation, to have him in the family, to learn as much as I can from him, for him to come up and talk to the staff like he's done before. It's just an honor, in that situation.
Coach Dickerson, we really appreciate you joining us tonight, and thank you for that history lesson. I think it's something that we have to do. We got to remember our history and cherish that history, because there were those that came before us that paved the way.
Yes, sir.
Ron Dickerson Jr., assistant head coach, Morgan State University, special teams coordinator. And, Coach, if you will, we're going to bring in one key member of that special teams unit. If you could pass along that headset for us, we're going to bring in a student athlete here at Morgan State University. Coming to Morgan State for the very first time. This is his first year as a member of the Orange and the Blue. And he's been a key cog in Morgan State University, trying to make sure that our special teams act is together. Obviously, you have to get it done in all phases: offense, defense, and special teams.
My name is Nick O'Shea. I'm 5'9", 175, and I'm from West Bloomfield, Michigan, and I went to West Bloomfield High School.
Nick O'Shea is the freshman from Michigan. He comes on to attempt his first field goal as the Morgan Bears. It will come near side hash. It will be a 24-yard effort. Snap is away. Placement is down. The O'Shea 24-yard effort is true. Nick at night hits the field goal for the Orange and the Blue. Nick O'Shea with the 24-yard field goal. There he is. He's in the building. He's right there. He is number 46. That's Nick O'Shea all the way from Bloomfield, Michigan. Nick, we appreciate you joining us this evening.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Let's talk about the journey, man. What brought you halfway across the country from your native Michigan to Maryland, Baltimore, Maryland, and Morgan State University?
So I reached out to Coach Dickerson late my senior year after the season, and he introduced me to Coach Jones. They saw some film on me. Coach Jones actually traveled out to Detroit and visited me at my home. I liked what I met. I liked Coach Jones a lot, and I liked what he had to say about the program. So later that week, I came to Baltimore and visited Morgan. Just loved it. Couldn't find a better situation for myself.
How's the fit been so far? So good for you as a Morgan Bear? How's that orange and blue look on you, man?
Well, I've enjoyed every part of it. I've been treated very well by the coaches, by the school. I couldn't ask for anything more.
Nick O'Shea, Morgan State University place kicker, punter, really does it all. Nick, let's break it down piece by piece. Let's start on the place kicking side, particularly the field goal kicking, where there is no in between. You either make it or you don't. There is no halfway. Psychologically, how does a kicker deal with that, either the height of success, the joy, or the agony of defeat with no in between? How do you deal with that kick for kick, day for day, as you go about your daily business?
Well, the biggest thing for me is just, as a kicker, it's important to recognize when you make mistakes and what you need to get better on. You need to recognize the mistakes, watch film, get better, but you also need to recognize when it's time to move past those kicks and when it's time to just focus on the next one. And that's the biggest thing for me. When I go on the field, my biggest focus is just doing my job. I trust my line, my snapper, my holder, the situation the coaches put me in, and I just go in. My job is just to kick the ball straight, and that's what I try to do.
Walk me through the process of a kick coming up. You know the team's driving. They get within field goal range. You know it's just about showtime for you. Psychologically, what are you going through from that moment to the moment you kick it through the uprights?
I just try to zone everything out. I usually go to the other end of the field so I can face the uprights. Usually when I walk on the field, so I'll go to the opposite end of where the team is, where we're driving towards. And that way there's no distractions. Usually the net's down there so I can warm up. And as I walk on the field, the uprights get bigger usually because you get closer to them. So it's just a little process for me that helps me focus up on the kick.
Do you know when you walk into a stadium on a given night that you have it that night or that you don't have it that night when you're going through your pregame rituals? Do you know, are you feeling it on a given day that either you do or you don't have it on that particular game day?
For me personally, I won't leave warm-ups until I feel like I have it. You know, I won't leave warm-ups until I'm confident that I can come through for my team on each opportunity I'm put into. So that's my job, is to have it when I'm called upon. So I think usually that I'm pretty confident when the game starts. Yeah.
Let's talk about the other aspects, because you are multidimensional. You also do some punting for Morgan State University. And I guess the same questions, your punting game. Is that something that you feel when you walk into a stadium in terms of whether or not you have what it takes to do your job as the punter?
Yeah, for me, I think I'm naturally more of a field goal kicker, but with the situation we have, Alex is kicking well, and so it's his time, and I'll be ready when called upon, whether it's this year, next year, whenever that time comes. But right now, my job is to punt for the team, and that's what my team needs me to do. So punting is one of those things for me where I have to get in the groove. It's a feel good thing. I got to focus on not swinging too hard. I usually swing about 80% just to try to be as consistent as possible. That's what the team needs. That's what the team wants. To put the defense in the best position possible.
I wanted to ask you, I noticed a lot this season, like back in the day, you would see the punter kick it straight kick, but I noticed now that you guys adjust or maybe run and then kick it on the line. Is there any particular reason for that?
So that's a rugby punt. When we roll out, generally it's because if they're rushing through the middle, if they're rushing hard, we can get outside, and it gives me time to get my head up and see where the rush is coming from. And the biggest thing is that a ball rolling on the ground pretty hard is it makes the returner nervous usually. He's not willing to pick it up always, or definitely not willing. It doesn't give him space and time. So me rolling out creates time for my coverage team to get down there and stay on top of the returner, and it minimizes return yards.
Does it affect your distance, or you just looking to place the kick in a certain area?
So with rugby punts, the biggest thing is I just try to keep it as simple as possible. Roll out, and you don't want it high, you want it low, about 15 yards above the ground, and you want it hard so it gets a good bounce. The bounce is the biggest thing with that. So I think you always want it in the right spot so your coverage team can get down there, but really the bounce. And another big thing for me is when it's windy, it's tough to do traditional punting, because if it gets caught up in the wind and the wind's blowing in your face, that's tough. And rugby punt, since it keeps low and gets a good bounce, it usually doesn't hurt you as bad.
That's the freshman. That's Nick O'Shea. Alex Weaa, a senior. So moving forward, it's going to be your world, Nick, as Morgan State University place kicking and maybe punting going to be in your hands. Are you looking forward as you move forward in your Morgan career?
Oh, yeah, I'm excited. I'm thankful for every opportunity I've had this year, and I'm excited for every opportunity I'll get in the future.
Nick, going to look for you to do your thing on Saturday when the Bears take on the Wildcats. Thank you so very much for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
Coach Jones, just lastly, before we let you go, we talked about the importance of winning at home, but also, if you could, Coach, just the importance of finishing strong these last few ball games of the season.
Absolutely. You're talking about an opportunity to play 3 more football games. You're talking about an opportunity to finish in the MEAC Conference 5-3, which will be something that hadn't happened in a while for Morgan State University. So we got an opportunity to still finish a special season in a special way. And we're pretty excited about that. We got 2 of those 3 football games at home in front of our home crowd. And then we get to go to Norfolk, Virginia and play that last game. So there's a lot of things out in front of us. There were a lot of goals that we had, and some of those goals are still out in front of us. In particular, being on the positive side of winning in the MEAC Conference. Because at the end of the day, we want to be competitive in our conference. And we have an opportunity to do that with these last 3 games.
That's the head man in charge. That is Ernest Jones, head football coach at Morgan State University. Want to thank Coach Jones. Want to thank Coach Dickerson. Also want to thank Nick O'Shea. Morgan State University football back to their business on Saturday. 4 o'clock will be kickoff time. We'll begin our broadcast with the Morgan Game Day experience at 3 o'clock. The Bears looking to take down the Wildcats of Bethune-Cookman University. I'm Lamont Germany for Renard Styles. We're going to take a break, and when we get back, how about a little softball, y'all? We got Dom Young in the building. We got Coach Heinlein in the building. We're going to talk to the champs. They are the defending MEAC Northern Division champion, Lady Bears softball squad. That's straight ahead as Morgan Sports Live continues.
Hi, this is Mikkel Hunter of Mornings with Mikkel. Thank you for your kindness and support of your live local morning show, Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. to 10, where you can count on us to prepare you for the start of your day. We appreciate you and your investment in the future of WEAA. But there's still time and still a need for your support. Please consider sending your tax-deductible donation to WEAA.org. Support your community radio station today.
Tune in to WEAA tonight at 10 p.m. for a special broadcast of the Hip Hop Chronicles Respect My Vote Tiny Hall discussion held at the WEAA studios, and find out why you need to get out and vote. From Reverend Yearwood from the Hip Hop Caucus, Catalina Bird, Donnie Glover, Jill P. Carter, Lil Key, Aaron Maben, Derek Chase, and me, Mike Nice. That's tonight at 10 p.m. right here on WEAA 88.9 FM and WEAA.org.
I'm Sandy Mallory, inviting you to join me for the latest sounds of the Neo Soul Cafe from 1 to 3 p.m. 2 hours of the best music to celebrate your day. The Soul Revival music features Jill Scott, John Legend, Alicia Keys, Jeff Bradshaw, and many more. Tune in and join me for the latest music Monday through Friday, 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. It's the best sounds for your enjoyment daily, hosted by me on WEAA.
You're here, I'm pleased, I really did.
Not sure if you are a current WEAA member? Call us at 443-885-2075.
Back at you on a Thursday night. We call this thing Morgan Sports Live. We do it every Thursday night. Tonight we do it from Glory Days in Towson on Joppa Road. Talk a little Morgan State University sports. Just talk to the Morgan head coach, football coach, Ernest Jones. Again, the Bears back in business on Saturday afternoon. They're going to take on the Bethune-Cookman University Wildcats. That game's going to kick off at 4 o'clock. We will begin our coverage with the Morgan Game Day experience. It gets jump-started at 3 o'clock on Saturday afternoon. The Bears looking to see if they can go ahead, run the table for the balance of the season, and try to get that first win at home. As we transition away from football, how about a little softball, y'all? As Morgan State University softball head coach is in the house. The Bears coming off a championship season, MEAC Northern Division champions, and looking to see what they can do with the upcoming 2019 season. Just finished their fall ball schedule, so it gave Coach Heinlein an opportunity to take a peek at the ladies who will be on the diamond come spring 2019. First, we want to thank Coach Larry Heinlein for spending his Thursday night with us. Appreciate it, Coach.
Oh, happy to be here, Lamont.
Let's talk about last year, man, before we talk about this year, because I'm still bathing in that championship feel from last year. All that winning y'all did, man, it hasn't rubbed off yet.
Hey, winning never gets old. You know what I mean? It's we had 29-17 record last year. We had a lot of signature wins that I would call, and we played very well most of the time, and it paid off. We won the MEAC North Championship for the first time in Morgan State history, I believe, and it was great. And we competed, I'd say, every game out, right, Dom?
I agree.
Yeah, I'm here with Dom Young, who's our starting right fielder, first team all.
Oh, we're going to talk to the superstar.
I know
we're going to talk to the superstar. We're going to get you out the way first. Then we're going to concentrate on the superstar.
That's good. So I think last year, our signature way we play is we have good pitching, good defense, great base running, and we take those three and mold them together, and we're a tough force to compete against. Huh? And we beat teams from the CAA conference, the NEC, the Big East. I keep rattling them off. The MAC, the MAAC. I mean, we beat teams from all over the place in different conferences. So people know who Morgan State is now, softball-wise.
Well, there's no question, Coach, that you built this team and got it to the point where they reached championship timber. I know you were a little disappointed in the tournament when you went down, hopeful of maybe being able to run the table and bring that thing back home. In your view, what were the missing ingredients that you couldn't quite get over the hump in the MEAC tournament last year in Florida?
I think we're missing a bat. One more bat in the lineup would have helped us. We had the pitching. The first game of the tournament, we faced the girl, a young lady had like 320 some strikeouts for the year. She was a force in the circle. but we had pitching too, so we went toe to toe with that, and we won 2-0. And then the next game, we had plenty of opportunities to beat FAMU, but we fell short. It was a windy day, a fly ball that just landed just on the other side of the fence, and that was we came up short. And then in the losers bracket, you have your difficulties, but another big bat or a big bat would have really helped us and got us to the next level.
Coach, locally, how do you recruit locally? Are there any schools that are attractive to you as far as recruiting? And how many local talents do you have on your team?
That's a great question. We have actually 2 girls on the team from Eastern Tech, which is in Baltimore County. So that's the most local we have. We have a couple of girls from Virginia. Our goal is to absolutely recruit locally. I think it's good for the university. It's good for our team. But we are from all over. We have girls from Colorado, California, Arizona, Pennsylvania, New Jersey. I mean, it's a it's a widespread net that we have, but we try to get local girls first. And Eastern Tech has a great softball program, and we were able to tap 2 of their best players. Our starting left fielder, Giselle Alvarez, is turned into a fine player, and we just got a junior college transfer, Sarah Hagee, who's also from there. And so if they're around town, we're looking at them.
Coach just wrapped up fall ball, had an opportunity to see some of the incoming young ladies. A lot of new faces on that roster, Coach. I had a lot of folks I didn't recognize, so good to see some of the new talent there. Assess for me, how do you think fall ball went? What kind of guide is it for you as you move into the spring?
I think fall ball went pretty much as we had planned. We had a mixture of different types of teams. We had a junior college team. We had a couple of higher Division I and Division II teams. So I think we were able to see how we fared against different levels. So I could test the new players against different competition. And also, we're still jockeying for position on some of the returnees. Some of the young ladies are really stepping up to the plate, and no pun intended, they're stepping up and trying to win a spot. And so I think we had a lot of competition, good competition, and we were able to see that in our fall games.
Well, I'll tell you one thing you did last year that I'm still smiling about is y'all beat Towson. And Morgan softball had never, ever beaten Towson before, and we've had some difficulty with Towson and other sports. So when you beat them not once but twice, it had me smiling.
Well, yeah, and sometimes the ball rolls your way and bounces your way, but I'd like to say that Towson was a great team. They had the best season they've ever had. They had 42 wins, I believe, and our team was able to go over at their place and beat them twice. And I believe that we played good ball and were able to compete at that level. And there was no luck involved there. We played good ball, and it showed. So we were really pleased. I mean, beating a team of that caliber and the players they had last year was phenomenal, and Dom will attest to that. It was great feeling.
Let's take a look into the crystal ball. 2019, you mentioned that maybe a bat or two would have helped last year's team. Have you had a chance to add that bat or two as you look at what we're going to have in that dugout in 2019?
Yeah, we've got. I mentioned Sarah Hagee, who batted over 600 in junior college, made first team All-American JUCO. Demisha Charles, who's an international player, plays for the Netherlands national team. We look for big things out of her. So we've got some Amy Pacheco, who's from Arizona. I'm going to forget somebody, Coach. Sir. I'm on the spot here, but we've got a number of people who are battling for a starting position who can help us. And I just named 3 newcomers, and we have a couple more. Right, Tom?
Yes.
Coach, let's talk about the schedule for 2019. Obviously, you have your MEAC opponents. So I guess the question is more outside of the MEAC. Who are some of the people that you're going to be competing against once the spring season starts?
Well, I'm excited about us facing Notre Dame down in Florida. Notre Dame's a top-flight softball school, as they are in most sports. So that's like we marked that down. We got Fordham on the agenda. Fordham has been to the NCAA tournament the last five years in a row. University of Alabama Birmingham, which has got a really nice softball program. These are, high 30+ win teams. So we have a mixture of of teams that are at the higher levels, middle levels. Cornell is coming down to play us here, and so I'm really liking our schedule. I think it's going to test us, and I think we're going to do well.
Well, Coach, I'm looking forward to it. Can't wait to get it jump started in 2019. Looking for even bigger, better things from the Lady Bears.
I'm with you.
We want to go ahead and talk to a student athlete. You already brought her in. You started interviewing her before I did, but I'll go ahead and finish up. It's
Sorry about that,
young lady that is in her senior year, so this is the last rodeo. And the reason I love her game so much is because her parents bring food to every game. That's the main thing. And no, I'm talking about Dom Young, who is in her senior season, the outfielder, the leadoff hitter for the Lady Bear softball squad. And I have to tell you, Dom, it was an out-of-body experience last year when I saw you get thrown out trying to steal. Because whenever you're still on the base, you never get thrown out. You got thrown out. I couldn't believe it. I was like, what happened? They threw out my girl?
No, it's probably safe. We just have terrible umpires in the MEAC, so it's okay.
I'm feeling you. Let's talk about the journey. What even brought you to Morgan State University to begin with?
Kind of a funny story, actually. So I'm one of the student athletes from New Jersey, and I was kind of like half committed to this really small D2 school because it was kind of just last minute decision. And as I'm like thinking, like maybe if I just send out my video one more time, add some other schools on there, I'll get a reply. So sent out a video to Coach Myron Vanderpool at Morgan State. And I hadn't even closed my computer yet, and I got an email back. And as I'm reading the email, I'm getting a phone call, and I answer, and it goes, hey, it's Coach Larry from Morgan State. And I'm like, who? I hadn't even looked it all the way up yet, so I didn't know who it was. And that was a Wednesday, and I visited on a Friday and committed on that Saturday. So it was kind of like an immediate response when I got there that I knew that's where I wanted to be. One of the biggest buildings there, Holmes Hall, looked just like my high school. And all of the girls were immediate family, so that's how I knew that I wanted to be at Morgan State.
Well, you made it a family affair. As I mentioned, your parents are at every game, and they do bring food. But also your younger sister, she is also a Lady Bear. Talk about how important it was for you when Jolly joined you in that outfield.
So when my sister was looking at schools and going around being recruited, like in the back of my mind, I always wanted her to go, but to Morgan, but I didn't want to push it because I didn't want to seem like I was picking for her and being a bossy older sister. So I would just like kind of hint at it every once in a while. And then finally she was like, I'm just going to go to Morgan State. That sounds good. And I'm so excited. So then being able to play next to her again, because I hadn't got to play with her in 2 years, was the most amazing experience. And everyone always asks, like, do you guys fight in the outfield? And I'm like, only when we're trying to call each other off a ball. That's just about it. If a ball goes between us, we kind of look at each other like, yikes, coach is going to yell at us for that one. But there's never really any hostility or bickering in right in center.
Of course, this being your senior year, I'm wondering if you can contrast for me the difference between you as an individual, as a freshman, and the Dom is speaking to me tonight, and also the difference in the team that you first joined as a freshman and that team as you see it around you now in your senior year.
So individually as a freshman, I think I would continually try to shy away from a leadership role that wasn't going to happen. There's no way I was going to be able to shy away from it. The fact that I was, playing every day and I was a pillar in the starting lineup, you're automatically a leader, whether you want to be or not. So I think the Dom speaking to you now has completely developed as that leader and realized that in order to be a leader, sometimes you lead by example, sometimes you lead by words, and you kind of have to have a combination of both to have a successful team. And on the topic of the team, I think freshman year was, and obviously I wasn't there before that, but freshman year that team was the beginning of the winning attitude. That team knew that we could win way more games than we were winning at the beginning of the year. And I think that transferred so well that now there's games that we don't go into cocky, but we go in expecting to win. Like we went into those 2000 games expecting to win. We weren't hoping to win. We weren't hoping that they dropped one or two balls that helped us out. We went in knowing that we were going to be the better team that day.
Let me just say this. There are some people, and I think they're missing the boat. For them, softball is kind of an off the radar